get started in just a minute, but a couple of things came up in the meeting that I wasn't actually expecting. Well, if I can get everybody to start to their seats, we'll get going in just a minute. Okay, the City Council meeting of November 15, 2010 will now come to order. Please remember the times indicated next to the agenda items are an approximate start time only. Please turn off all cell phones and pagers for the duration of the meeting. Will the City Clerk please call the roll?
Is there everybody's lights flashing?
Morgan.
Okay. As I call your name, please press your flashing button. Mayor Mattel?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Snyder?
Here.
Councilman Varela?
Here.
Councilman Benson?
Here.
Councilwoman Carson?
Here.
Deputy flashing button. Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Teeter?
Here.
Councilman Johnson?
Here.
Councilman McIntyre?
Here.
Councilman Bullock?
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. First item is, will the audience please rise for a moment of silence and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah, just move it forward. Thank you, Jen. Thank you. The Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, will city staff please pass around the microphone to introduce the audience. Thank you.
Alan Lee.
Jack Kesey.
Bob Donovan.
Maxine Galindo.
Sandy Carruthers?
Danny Thomas.
Eddie Thomas.
Pam Stratford?
Greg Callahan.
Megan Callahan. Sherry Callahan. Ellen Howe. Maura O'Neill.
No, sir.
There's Donna. Martha Applegarth.
Ramona Cisneros? Francis Zajac?
Robert Romine. Gene Leffel.
Drew Bishop?
Thelma Cole. Lois Miller.
Dave Stallford. George Maxley. Justin Lappy.
Vicki Masters.
Ms. Ryan Cordero, Intergovernmental Relations.
Carolyn Keith, Parks and Recreation. Mary Pat Callis, Parks and Recreation. Sarah Buller, Parks and Recreation.
I'm Andrew, Deputy City Manager. Bill Blocker, Chief of Police.
Lynn Howell, City Manager's Office.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. Rolling, nice to see you back, sir. Next item is citizen communication. Ordinarily, I would call people who are listed on here tonight, but The first thing I'm going to do is we had a veterans event at our new place next to the Parks and Rec the other day, which Mayor Pro Tem Snyder handled for me because of some family illnesses. But as a result of that, we got a letter from one of the gentlemen who was there, which, let's say, touched absolutely everybody's heart, I think, that read the letter. The veterans in our city and Commerce City as a whole are the best anywhere. I have never seen a city the size of ours that has the heart for our veterans like we do here in Commerce City. It is, I don't know how to describe it. Up until just a little while ago, we were a fairly small city, yet we had the largest Veterans Day Parade, Memorial Day Parade. I mean, it's just been phenomenal here. And this letter, when I read it, I got a hold of the city manager, and I got a hold of Mayor Pro Tem, and said, you know, this is something that we need to get out. This is what it's about. This is what veterans and Commerce City is really about. And we contacted the person, and he said he would allow us to read it. And not only are we going to read his letter tonight, but we are going to have it in our city newsletter that will go out Friday. Is that correct? So that everybody will get a chance to see it. I've been through this thing 4 or 5 times, and a couple of times I hesitate. So if I hesitate again today, it's okay, I will recover and we will get going with the rest of the letter. So I am going to read it, and this is from a gentleman here in our city, and the letter was actually written by him. It says, "My name is Charles Greg Callahan, and I am a proud Vietnam veteran. I just wanted to take the time to thank all of you very much for the wonderful Veterans Memorial Day dedication you had yesterday. My wife spent 2 months hiding from me the fact that she had put my name on a paper at your memorial. She even took my DD-214 to help her get the information right." I'm surprised you still had it. I was kept completely in the dark about what was going to happen until she walked me to the front of the memorial and showed me the stone with my name on it. Charles G. Callahan, Air Force, Vietnam. At that point, I turned into a little girl and cried my eyes out. I was completely overwhelmed. I had the honor of walking on stage and introducing myself to a few of you. My only regret was not being able to meet all of those who were involved in this wonderful dedication. Outside, my wife and I had the privilege of meeting the man who was responsible for engraving the stones. It was hard to talk to him because I was still crying. Just a small story. When I came back from Vietnam in 1970, after a 1-year tour, my company commander told all of us to probably not wear our uniforms in public. I spent decades hiding the fact that I was a Vietnam vet. Over the last 10 years or so, I've come to realize that I should be proud to have served. 40 years ago, I couldn't wear my uniform. Today, my name is in front of a Veterans Memorial. Today was probably the proudest moment of my life, still adjusting to the idea that I even deserve all this. Anyway, I wanted to take the time to let you all know how proud I am to have been a part of all this, and to let you know how proud I am of all of you for taking the time and effort, and certainly the dedication, to see this memorial dedication come to fruition. Acknowledgement of all veterans by important government officials is truly an honorable experience for me, and I thank you all. For all those I was not able to personally acknowledge their involvement in this project, please let them know too that I am eternally grateful for this honor all of you have given all of us. I am truly humbled. Don't think for 1 second that the things you do don't matter. I can't wait to show my 24-year-old daughter. She'll be proud of her dad. Now, thanks to the dedication of all of you, I'm proud of me. Respectfully, Charles G. Callahan. We have Mr. Callahan in the audience tonight, and if it's okay with him, if he would just come forward and maybe say a few words.
Thank you very much, sir. I was born in Thai today, but I've been retired for over 5 years, and I was afraid to find out that maybe I didn't remember how to tie one. My second apology is to my failure to involve everybody in the email that I had sent. I started off with a list, and I didn't know how far down I needed to go, so you can pass that on to everybody else. I appreciate that very much. Would like to expand a little bit. After I came home, as I addressed in the letter, I was home for about 2 weeks and was supposed to be stationed in Francis E. Warren Air Force Base 2 weeks after that. I had a month leave when I got back. 2 weeks home, I jumped off of a concrete revetment and broke a bone in my foot. I was staying with my parents at the time, and I had just purchased a 1970 Volkswagen Beetle, which was totally cool. Cost me $2,500, had racing stripes and everything else. Because I broke my foot, I was not able to use the clutch to get to Fitzsimmons Hospital. I had my uniform. My parents said that I should go ahead and go by myself. By the time I got about halfway there, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to use the car clutch. So I took my father's crutches, he's a doctor, and I had them in the back of the car. So I used my crutches from 1st Avenue to 14th Avenue to Colfax and hopped on a bus, headed out east to Fitzsimmons. And I thought that it was necessary that I wear my uniform so that it would be easier for me to gain entrance to the hospital. I picked up a bus, got on the bus, and told him that I knew that I had to head out east. At the time, I didn't know, or at that time, Fitzsimmons Medical Center was out in the boondocks. And I was sitting on the bus thinking about what's happened to me the last couple of weeks and what happened the last year or so on. And I wound up going past Fitzsimmons, and the bus driver turned on the street, and I said, I don't think this is where I should be going, so I got off, got on my crutches, and walked across Colfax and hitched a ride. About 50 yards down the road, a pickup truck with some guys in it pulled over and asked me if I wanted to ride. I said, yes, sir. And I got in the back of the pickup truck, and they took me out into the prairie and beat me up. When I got to Fitzsimmons, I had 2 cracked ribs and bloody nose and a black eye. From that point on, I thought that it wasn't appropriate for me to, like I addressed in the letter, to let people know that I was a Vietnam veteran. The point of the story is that, like I said, that my name on a memorial 40 years later is absolutely full circle, and my life is complete, and if I died right now, I would be a happy man. I appreciate the acknowledgement of the council, the time and the dedication. I also would like to acknowledge especially the people that were at the dedication of the memorial, the people who had their veterans with them. They maybe unwillingly provide a huge support system to our veterans, and they need to be acknowledged also. I've had some discussions with the Mayor Pro Tem, and she understands profusely exactly what I mean. Without the families next to all veterans, whether they be World War II or Grenada or Vietnam or Korea, they all have a support system, and it's important that we all stand by them. If is deemed necessary by the council that you wish my further involvement in veterans' causes and or issues, I am here for you on a volunteer basis. I would have charged you, but because my name is in front of the memorial now, if you couldn't afford me. Again, thank you very, very much. It's the most honorable thing that's ever happened to me, and I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around it. I don't completely believe that what I did meant that much. But when I hear from people of your stature and position, my lovely wife and my wonderful daughter who's Christ me.
Would you like to introduce them also?
Yes. Sharon Callahan, my wife. She's been my wife for 7 years. She's supported me through my life. And my daughter, Megan Callahan. She showed up unexpectedly. She's only here, but she loves her father. And she just proved it just now. But thank you very much, and it's an absolute honor that you allowed me to take tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll get back to the next part, citizen communication. There are 2 public comment rosters made available at the table at the entrance of council chambers for those who wish to address council. 1 roster is for non-agenda items, and the second is for action items listed on the agenda. When I call your name, please state your name and address for the record. You're reminded each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. City council is reminded they are not to engage in discussion or debate, but may ask clarifying questions and express concern when appropriate. City manager will generally assign staff members to get the necessary information to solve issues. First person on the list is Alan Lee.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Alan Lee, 11206 Juliet, Commerce City. They say we all can be great because we all can serve. And there's no greater service than in the armed forces. So as a resident of Commerce City, I want to salute the gentleman that came before me. And as the son and grandson of veterans, I have a profound appreciation for the service. And I also want to thank the Mayor and City Council. As a resident, I heard nothing but beautiful things about the memorial services that was put on and led by the city. Far too often, we hear all the negative things. Far too often, we do not hear the positive things. So I too was moved as I heard the Mayor, and even more moved as I heard from the man himself. I come before you.
Mr. Lee, before you start, Ms. Barrow, would you start this time over again? I don't want to cut you out of a minute for saying those nice things.
Okay. I appreciate it. I don't think I will take the full.
Okay, well, that's fine. You can cut it short. That's okay too.
I really wanted to be here last week, or a week before I forget, but I was actually traveling and could not be before the council when you ultimately did the final reading on the ordinance. And I probably appeared before you greater than a dozen times. And some of those times we've had some spirited discussion and some spirited debate. But I want to come by this evening and specifically say thank you, and thank you to the council as a whole. I wanted to come by and let you know and reassure you that we intend to take the crowd least travel, and that's the high road. They get an email from our good city attorney, and also want to thank the city attorney. Got an opportunity to review the unit as he proposed and as he saw them. I appreciate the fact that if he read it, he did a second look, so to speak, and reevaluated it and made some modifications to the initial unit. We still have some minor concerns, but we substantially agree with the city attorney and how he defined the unit. And with those minor concerns that I share with you, I hope we'll be able to talk through them. We have not, Councilman Mountain Valley, visited a single home. We have not visited a single work site. We did send an email communication, which we think is positive in nature, and I do review all those before they go out. None of them are critical of staff, council, anybody else. Their advocacy in terms of why their co-workers think they should avail themselves of the provisions provided. by the council. We do not believe that they violate the spirit or the intent of the resolution, but as I indicated to our city attorney, until we have an opportunity to talk about it, we won't even send any more email communications. I will say to the council, we have to have some reasonable access at some point in time to employees. So I'll talk to the city attorney and see how we can maybe define that. We have been far more restrictive than we ought to be, but I wanted to make sure to create as few bumps in the road as possible. But more importantly, I want to come by and say thank you, and I'm sure working with the city attorney will be able to work that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person on the list, Ron Roman. I said, I said welcome back before. It's nice to see you up and around, sir.
Good evening to all the mayor, city council, and staff. My name is Robert Romine. My city address 6760 East 74th Avenue. I was born at Fitzsimmons Army Hospital. My father was a Navy man who was in World War II before Pearl Harbor, Korea, and Vietnam. I keep his dog tag on my key ring right next to my own. So that being said, I want to thank everyone for the wonderful demonstration of honor that was presented on Veterans Day, and even more than even other cities have given. This city gives so much to veterans and does so much in honoring them. Thank you. Now, as I approach council this evening, as I do about this time every year, I'm looking for some help with my hat and glove campaign. The Derby Winter Festival is coming up, and as has been for the past 5 years, we've had a hat and glove campaign, and we've given away hats and gloves to children in our own community, but otherwise may not receive Christmas presents or hat and gloves against the cold. I am putting forth my own money, of course, as I usually do, but I am looking for the city to partner up with me. And we must realize that this is a quality and needed community outreach project. Now more than ever, it is absolutely needed. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Flannery, I know that we somehow get involved in this every year. If you could get with Mr. Romine, and again, glad to see you back, sir. Okay, there's only one set of minutes before council this evening for approval, and then the minutes of October 11, 2010. Now I entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Ms. Teeter?
Yes, move to approve the minutes for October 11th, 2010.
Mr. Johnson?
Second motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of October 11th. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all request a voice vote, please. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion passes. Okay, there's 2 items on the consent agenda this evening. Council's reminded, is this where you're going to jump in? Okay. Council's reminded that these items can be removed from the consent agenda for discussion purposes at the request of a council member. Does anyone wish to remove any item from the consent agenda? And first, we're going to go to Mr. Gadd.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, you'll note on the consent agenda is Resolution 2010-67, which is a resolution that would provide for amendment to the employment agreement that the council approved on my behalf several weeks ago. I'm pleased to advise you that I've had meetings with a Medicare consultant and also with a tax consultant that was retained by the city to help obtain some clarification in this area. And this amendment will not be necessary because I am qualified to participate in the city's health and dental plan. It was thought by myself included that initially I could not participate in the city's health dental plan because of reduction in my hours. But now I understand that that is permissible, so I would prefer to stay with the city's plan, and therefore the amendment is not necessary because the original agreement that you approved allowed for that. So at this time, the appropriate procedure would be for some, if you grant my request, that is, to remove the resolution from the consent agenda. Then after you vote on the consent agenda, and then just move to table indefinitely Resolution 2010-67 after you approve the consent agenda.
Okay. So the first thing I need to do is have that removed from the consent agenda. Mr. McElhenney, would you be willing to do that?
Move to remove Resolution 2010-67 from the consent agenda.
Ms. Snyder?
Second the motion.
A motion and a second to remove Resolution 2010-67 from the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion passes. Now we'll go to the consent agenda. Mr. Bullock?
Move to approve the consent agenda of Resolution 2010-66, Council seated.
Okay, Ms. Snyder?
Second the motion.
A motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. I need a roll call. Title. City Attorney, right? Please read the title.
Title of Resolution 2010-66, resolution approving cooperative agreement for Northeast Greenway Corridor Restoration Plan process.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. City Attorney's read the title. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call. Do we need a roll call vote on that, please? Consent agenda is passed 9-0. Now I need a resolution to table Resolution 2010-67 indefinitely. Mr. McElhenney?
Move to table Resolution 2010-67 indefinitely.
Mr. Bullock?
Second motion.
I have a motion and a second to table Resolution 2010-67. Do you need to read the title on that, sir, or just? Okay.
No, it's not necessary.
The voice vote is okay on that?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Marino, did you have a
Discussion.
discussion, sir?
I'll just say that I'm glad we were able to work it out because, to be honest, I did have some reservations with the resolution as drafted. I think that Mr. Gaylor, you're a phenomenal employee. You deserve every benefit that this council gives to you, but it did make me think about the benefits that we offer other part-time employees and whether that would be consistent with our policy. So if it is okay with the council, I would like to request a report to see what kind of benefits we do offer our part-time employees.
Just in the meeting?
Yeah, just in future, just a report.
Mr. Flannery, or could we do that just in an email, council? Would that be sufficient?
I said, just like study item, maybe.
Sure.
Placed on.
Mr. Flannery, if you would get Mr. Marino and see how well will satisfy his request. Thank you, sir. Mr. Marino, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Discussion. So we've had the discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. You're just testing me a little. There's 4 ordinances on first reading tonight. They're all similar in that they amend the 2010 budget to recognize grant funding. There's $3,400 for bulletproof vests, $35,000 for the renovation of the Veterans Memorial, $187,500 for the North Range Trail Loop, and $120,000 for a bicycle and pedestrian master plan. Each ordinance will be voted on separately, and the grant administrator is present. Is the grant administrator? Oh, okay. Are there any questions from council on any of those 4 items? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to introduce ordinance 1820 by Councilman Stephen and approve the ordinance on first reading. Mr. McElhenney?
Move to introduce ordinance 1820 on first reading.
Mr. Johnson?
Second motion.
I have a motion and a second to introduce ordinance 1820 by council. The city attorney please read the title.
Title reads, an ordinance amending the 2010 budget for the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant Funds in the amount of $3,400 for the Bulletproof Vest Program in the Police Department and the authorization of the expenditure thereof.
Motion is second. City Attorney's read the title. Request a roll call vote, please. Vote is 9-0. Thank you very much. Now entertain a motion to introduce ordinance 1834 by council, approve the ordinance on first reading. Ms. Peter.
Yes, move approval of ordinance 1834.
Mr. Bullock.
Second motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 1834 on first reading. Will the city attorney, is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the city attorney please read the title?
Title reads, an ordinance amending the 2010 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Adams County Open Space Grant in the amount of $35,000 to be used for the renovation of the Veterans Memorial and the authorization of the expenditure thereof.
I have a motion and a second. City attorney's read the title. Request a roll call vote, please. Vote is 9-0. Thank you very much. Next item, I'll entertain a motion to introduce ordinance 1835 by council as stated and approve the ordinance on first reading. Ms. Snyder.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, move approval of ordinance 1835, council as seated.
Mr. McElhenney.
Happy to second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Will the city attorney please read the title?
Title reads, an ordinance amending the 2010 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Adams County Open Space Grant in the amount of $187,500 to be used for the design and preparation of the construction documents for the North Range Trail Loop and the authorization of the expenditure thereof.
The motion is second. The city attorney has read the title. Request a roll call vote, please. Showing 9-0. Thank you very much. The ordinance also passes. Last item up for approval is introducing ordinance 1844 by council and approve the ordinance on first reading. Mr. McElhenney.
Move to introduce ordinance 1844 on first reading. Council seated.
Mr. Benson.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 1844. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the city attorney please read the title?
An ordinance amending the 2010 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Tri-County Health Department pass-through grant from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, as part of the ARRA Economic Stimulus Program in the amount of $120,000 to develop a comprehensive bicycle and pedestrian master plan and authorization of the expenditure thereof.
Okay, a motion is second. City attorney's read the title. Have a roll call vote, please. Hearing 9 yeses. Thank you very much. Also passes. We now move on to study items. Mr. Flannery, if you'll introduce staff to come forward and open the discussion on the senior adult programs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Before I do, I'd like to just kind of introduce this. This topic specifically is related to the summit that the council held in the beginning of October. And we've met internally as staff. I've met and had conversations with several of the council members, and specifically Councilmember Moreno, about how we want to approach this. And so one of the things that internally we discussed was to start with some base information that there's a lot of information that's going to be presented to you, and they'll also be giving you a booklet of some other information. But we wanted to give that foundation of what some of the history of the senior programs and older adults programs that we have, but then look at possibly holding a follow-up meeting to the summit in December, and have the council there as well as staff to discuss some of the specific issues, and then begin the appointment process for the advisory commission. And we're going to go through that tonight, but I wanted to introduce that as a direct relation and correlation to all of your efforts in bringing this to our attention. So with that, I'd like to introduce Carolyn Keith.
Honorable Mayor, members of City Council, we appreciate the opportunity to share with you an overview regarding history of our senior programs and services offered by the Parks and Recreation Department, as well as information regarding our current programs and services offered to our seniors and older adults participating at the Commerce City Recreation Center and other locations throughout the community. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide you with information and does not require any formal action at this time. Joining me for tonight's presentation is Farrell Muller, Recreation Manager, and Mary Pat Gallus, Community Services Supervisor. We would respectfully ask that you give us an opportunity to make our presentation, addressing your questions at the conclusion of our presentation. For your convenience, we've numbered the slides in the bottom right-hand corner so that you can refer to a slide number when asking questions at the conclusion of the presentation if necessary. Commerce City has a rich history of programming for seniors and older adults. We also have a tradition of generations of families participating in our programs and services. In 1948, Cora Johnson, who is circled in red, the picture on your left of the slideshow. Cora was a part of the Derby's Plain Janes. Today, Cora's daughter, Carmen Kreitzer, who is circled, is a member of our Music Makers. Over the past couple of years, staff has been gathering our history in the making, interviewing participants and community members when documenting the history of senior programs and services. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the Commerce City Historic Society members whom we have touched base with when compiling our history, including Deborah Bullock and Reba Drotar. Our programming began with a group called the Derby Plain Janes in 1948. In 1969, another group was formed, QLE, Qualified by Long Experience. Beginning in 1975, the QLE met at Derby Elementary, which we know today as the Lester Arnold School. Beginning in 1985, the City of Commerce City began offering recreation programs and services. And with the opening of the Commerce City Recreation Center, including the senior in 1987, senior programs and services had a new home. In 2004, the city built the Contra Community Center, providing additional programming space as well as office space for staff. In 1948, the Derby Plain Janes planned programs including canning tips, sewing, and other economic type activities. We had melodrama programs that started when the Recreation Center opened in 1987. And back in the day, QLE had a Tuesday birthday dinner. Lunch, as it's known in today's lingo. that is known as the birthday lunch at the Commerce City Recreation Center, now a 40-year tradition. As Park and Recreation Department, we work diligently to honor and be respectful of our traditional programs and services, while working to recognize and acknowledge the needs and interests of all seniors and older adults in our community. Today's population in Commerce City is approximately 42,473 people. We estimate approximately 3,950 of those individuals of the age 65 and older. We came up with that number based on the 2000 census, which indicated that 9.3% of Commerce City's population was of the age of 65 and older. Unfortunately, we don't quite have the 2010 census data yet, so we'll be able to update those numbers at some point. When you look at our current recreation program users today, we have over 3,000 seniors and older adults registered in our active system. That's over 3,000 individuals. This includes individuals with annual memberships for the Recreation Center, as well as individuals participating in our programs, trips, and services. As you can see, we have a little over 1,400 folks, just under 1,500, aged 50 to 62, and over 1,500 aged 62 plus. 70% of those folks are residents, and 30% of those individuals are non-residents. As you can see, we have a rather high non-resident percentage for our industry standards in Parks and Recreation, in part due to our excellent programs, services, and staff. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge our commitment to affordable fees here in Commerce City. As you can see with our Recreation Center annual pass comparison, our resident rate for an annual pass for a senior, which is 62 and older, is $12. You can see how that compares with our neighbors here in the metro area. Additionally, our senior non-resident rate is $150, and once again, you can see that comparison. Just as a side note, our Recreation Center annual passes have not changed or increased since 2003. So again, we'd like to credit City Council with your commitment to our seniors regarding our fees related not only to annual passes with programs and services here in Commerce City. I'm hopeful that I've provided you all with a brief overview of our history and the seniors and older adults that we serve. With that said, I'd like to introduce Mary Pat Gallus, Community Services Supervisor, to share with you how we go about making decisions when determining our programs and services. Mary Pat?
Thank you. And thank you, City Council members, for letting me speak this evening. So, how do we design our programming? Well, we feel we use a variety of input. We make every effort, especially to have an emphasis on senior input. So I'd like to just share a couple examples that have allowed us to do that. We conducted senior focus groups throughout the city, which we were able to reach over 40 individuals that represented a mix of both active and potentially new participants. These focus groups were held throughout the city from north to south, and they generated programs such as our book club now in reunion and our Friday evening program. We also conducted health needs surveys. That was done by one of our senior advisory committees. They were able to get responses from 50 active members that generated new classes such as our yoga stretch, senior strength training, senior nutrition, and diabetes education. So we were excited about the results that brought us. And then our senior advisory committee that does outreach has been working on a survey that they designed, they developed, and now they're distributing, where seniors are actually reaching other seniors with survey results. They've currently had over 100 replies to their surveys of active participants, but they're not ready to stop there. They want to also, phase 2 is to reach other seniors who are not participating and get that survey out to them. For instance, we just recently did, the survey was distributed at the 9 Health Fair that we recently had at the Adams City High School. And then I know that in 2011 they have plans to review all of the comments and suggestions that were brought in from those surveys and begin to develop some action plan on that. We also conducted a phone survey recently this year to our birthday lunch attendees. We were seeking what their personal preference would be on a lunch menu. And we feel like we honored their responses. We have utilized trip evaluation cards. We've been doing that for a couple of years. We have had over 240 evaluation cards come back from our field trips. And our program team, they evaluate those, look those over, give us feedback and suggestions. That's generated some new destinations and locations, and made adjustments here and there as needed for our trips. We also keep a suggestion box in the senior lobby, which can remain anonymous if seniors want to make any kind of comments or suggestions. But I would say that probably our number one resource for input comes from just one-on-one feedback. And we do get a lot of that from our seniors. For instance, last year we had an individual that gave us some concerns about activities in the senior lobby, and since then we've been able to add to what we currently have. We've added the Wii bowling, we've added movie matinee, we've added bingo in the lobby, all in an effort to try to get some more activity going in that lobby. And then finally, of course, is just our professional networking that staff does. We do keep up in our networks on what's trends, what's hot, what's going on, what's our neighbors doing, what's happening in Adams County, and what's happening in the state. And that gives us input for program ideas. A key piece, of course, to all of this is going to be our senior advisory committees, and I wanted to mention those here tonight. We have, you can see the members listed for the outreach committee. I know that we have a few of them here tonight in the audience. If we can ask them to stand if you're on the outreach committee. They do a phenomenal job. It's worth the applause. Their purpose is to assist staff with the planning, coordinating, and leading outreach efforts to target our older adults and seniors in the Commerce City area and even Adams County at large. Some of the projects that they've been working on is the senior survey that I mentioned, and that was quite a big undertaking. It's taken us a good 18 months to get that off and running, but they're doing an awesome job with that. And I mentioned the health fair. That was their idea to have some presence at the night health fair this year, so we were able to have a booth for the 2 days. And then these welcome packets. We felt a need to reach out to new members, and so they designed and developed and now make these welcome packets that go to every new member that comes into our senior center, as well as we host a welcome coffee. And so those are another outreach way that the seniors have gotten involved. I would have to say probably their favorite activity is their own brainchild, and that was developed about 5 years ago, where they actually deliver now over 30 holiday dinners on Christmas Eve to isolated seniors here in Commerce City. And that's really where the applause needs to go. They do an awesome job with that, and they're ready to go again. Right before this meeting, I was already approached, okay, we've got to make our plans for this year. And so I think that's really seniors reaching seniors, and I think that's awesome. Our program committee, we have some members present here tonight from that group, if you'll stand. Okay, so they provide us feedback, suggestions, and program ideas regarding our programs, especially as we begin each new brochure. It's a great time to gather them together. One of the things that we've asked them to do is they review other senior center brochures, and that's kind of fun, but also very productive. They get ideas, they see what else is happening, and then we can also sometimes tweak what we're doing. So they give us a lot of good program input. They're the group that does review those trip evaluation cards, give us feedback, see what kind of changes or adjustments we might need to do. And then they're asked, and willingly, they are active participants. They participate in some of our programs and events, and they give us direct feedback on how that's going for them. So that's really critical for us, our program development. Okay, our next committee is our Health and Wellness Committee, and I do think we have someone here from that group. And they also give us feedback, suggestions, and input, but it's specifically regarding fitness and health programs. That's certainly in the industry. That is the a key area nowadays. People are very concerned about their health, and so they provide us some really valuable feedback on that. I do want to also just take a moment to acknowledge an active member, Lois Kimmis, and she was very active on this committee, and we'll sure miss her with that. One of their greatest accomplishments as well was a senior survey. So we had one group doing one survey and one group doing another, and they targeted it to health needs assessment. And they personally did one-on-one interviews with about 50 residents to find out what their needs were and what we could be doing. And again, that generated new classes, and it also brought about a senior health fair that they sponsored. That was held this last July at our rec center. We had about 110 participants who were getting blood pressure checks and all kinds of valuable information. We had several, maybe, I want to say about 12 vendors that came from the community. So that was a really productive health fair that they put together. And they as well go out and they tour other facilities, which is kind of fun to get some ideas on user-friendly equipment for seniors and that kind of thing. So they're a busy group. And finally, our last committee group is what we call special projects. And this year we had two different groups that became kind of special project committees. One was our Good Friends program. That's, as you probably know, is our financial assistance program for seniors. And we knew it had been a long time since we looked at that and reviewed it. So that committee of 8 did that. They were representatives from the different committees came together, and they've come up with a brand new piece of material that we can now begin to hand out. It's a really nice piece. They have some great input for just making the program overall more customer friendly, that we could reach out people and make it an easier and more comfortable way to take advantage of our Good Friends assistance, as well as some new fundraising ideas. So they worked hard on that. And then we had a group of 9 senior volunteers that participated in our survey team, and those individuals actually went through specific, like a 2-day training to conduct that survey that I mentioned earlier. So we commend them for doing that for us. That was a lot of help. So then that puts us into programming. We think our programs today are a nice combination of the rich heritage of the past and now what the present brings to us. As she mentioned, there's a 40-year tradition to our monthly birthday lunch. And so that's exciting that continues on. Our day trips, if you look at that photo on the bottom left, that's earlier when they was already going on those day trips. So that program area has continued strong as even through today. Maybe where they go is a little different, but that's a popular program as well. Our music makers, our handicrafts that we have going on, the card players that come every day, all those kinds of programs have continued through all of these years. So we do embrace the heritage of what's been ahead of us. And then we kind of blend it in with what we're doing today. We have the need, I mentioned Wii bowling, we have computer classes we have activities that occur out on the patio of Bison Grill. It's kind of the blending of the heritage with current events. So we're excited. It's a challenge, but it's something we really enjoy and embrace. So then we need to communicate to our participants. Just briefly, some mention of ways we communicate. We do put everything into our activity brochure that goes out 3 times a year. We have a direct mailing to seniors specifically. It's called the On the Move newsletter. It's a monthly. We have about 650 on that. There's no cost to it. They just ask to be on it. We utilize the Sentinel, our city news, our Common City website. We're getting more and more access to that. YourHub.com is in local papers. That's become a popular way to reach out and get our word out. Prime Time for Seniors, a specific newspaper for seniors. VolunteerMatch.com, that's a new website we're using to get new volunteers through the website. And then just program specific, your usual flyers, direct mail, postcards, etc. So this evening, I definitely did also want to just recognize you as City Council. To be applauded for the strong support you guys have provided over the years. First of all, just the Senior Center itself. It opens its doors in 1987. It's a beautiful senior center. It has been available to offer folks free drop-in activities. It's a comfortable social area, and that remains true today. It's still accessible. It's still available, and I think that's to be commended because of your support to the senior programs. Commerce City still remains as a forerunner in low, affordable cost programs. I think that's, again, the reason why we get some attraction by non-residents. The City Council has always been an avid supporter for senior transportation over the years, and because of that, you've always committed to a financial amount to the ALIP program, as an Adams County Transportation Program, and recently we were able to position ourselves on that policy council that we could then fold in our local trips, the trips to the rec center, trips to the beauty shop, they call them personal trips. We've been able to actually fold that into the Adams County overall service and actually create a savings for the city because of that. And so we didn't lose any services, but we're able to, be more efficient in our operations. And so I know that is a strong reason for that is because of Commerce City's steady commitment to that program over the years. And they were open to that idea, and we took it and ran. And then finally, I think just the ability to offer financial assistance, our whole Good Friends program, that's not available everywhere. And I think that's a really neat opportunity and program that Commerce City again supports and allows us to provide for our seniors. So we appreciate that, and again, just say thank you to all of you. And with that, I'm going to introduce Farrell Buller.
So all these programs and all these people to serve and a few amazing staff. How do we do it? Well, volunteers. We rely heavily on volunteers to be an extension of staff, an extension of the city. And as you can see on the top picture is George Maxey, and he is one of our volunteer drivers. And our drivers give their personal time and countless hours to take other seniors on trips around the city, around the state, sometimes out of state, so that people can still be participating. They also receive really stringent training, CPR and first aid, some of those things that are necessary that they're willing to do and take on. Nita Irwin is at the bottom corner, and she actually oversees a program called Outreach. This is a program where cultural events and activities are offered to free or low cost. And Nita has spent, I don't even know how many hours getting tickets, making sure we have escorts for those trips, setting up volunteer drivers, setting up vehicles to take people. And she actually has done such a great job. She received an award for excellence for Commerce City on behalf of Commerce City through the Outreach program, because she utilizes all the tickets and she makes sure that all of their expectations are met. As well as the middle picture is Selma Cole and Mary Landon. Our seniors volunteer for events. That's a picture of the veteran salute that Mayor Pat Gallups oversaw, and they want to help. They're willing to come and do something. We rely on this so much also because we know one of the other main key components for people participating with us is that social aspect. That's why they come to the recreation center, and they want to see people. They want to see a familiar face. They want to see somebody they trust. They want somebody to communicate with. Eric Alexander does our ceramics. You may or may not have ever seen him, but he has, I don't think, ever missed a day of work. And the seniors that do ceramics know they can depend on him. They're sharing their life stories with him. They're telling him their hardships. They're also learning new skills. He is so excited to be around our seniors. He's actually come to us with ideas of how to add an evening class so parents can bring their children to participate. He took some of the items that were made and took them to an award show, and actually one person got first place for it. So he's making sure that people are feeling empowered and important, and I guess that sense of self to feel good. Janet Kesey, she is obviously one of our front desk people. I did ask if I could use her picture and say this about her, but Janet, I think, is such a great representation of people today as seniors and older adults getting back into the workforce. Janet just turned 70 this year. That is not a headbutt, she said yes. You know, if somebody wants to see a consistent, friendly, familiar face in the mornings, you're going to see Janet. Janet regularly keeps the pulse for many of us on what's going on, who's in trouble, who's homeless, who is looking for food, who needed assistance. People are sharing things with Janet and our other front desk staff, but they really only feel comfortable sharing with those people. We think they're key. Our front desk staff and our other part-time staff, whether it's our office size program, fitness, different areas like that, they probably have the most one-on-one direct contact with our patrons on a regular basis. And what an example of somebody living a healthy lifestyle. We would want to turn us, you know. Our full-time staff, we have 3 people dedicated to the adult, older adults, and senior service areas and program areas. Vicki Masters, Jessica Lampy, and Mary Cat Dallas. And, you know, if there's one thing that I would hope that you know about us from our events and things we've done, we love what we do. We have chosen a job that is just service. That's what we do. Our existence for being here is to provide service to citizens and to others. We feel we're experts. We're your Commerce City experts. We make sure that we're on top of trends, economy, learning about our residents, learning what other people are doing, maybe hopefully some things we shouldn't do. We want feedback. That helps our existence all the time, as well as taking ideas into consideration and implementing them when we're able to. Keeping in mind what's happening in the city, what's council's direction, as well as the times there are city, state, and federal mandates that we need to comply with. So, you know, please trust and help know where we want your thoughts, we want your feedback, and at times we can and can't, you know, make some things happen. But it is what we do. It's what we love to do, and I would say we're in Commerce City all because we want to be. We want to be working here. We want to be with these citizens and with you guys as citizens as well. I know this is a lot of information and a lot of different components. One of the things that I went ahead and did is we put together an information packet for you. And the very front cover of it, tucked inside, is actually tonight's presentation. So if you want to get any information from it or refer to slides or a number, it's right there. The cover page directly inside is actually called Senior Summit from October 5th, 2010. And Councilman Moreno, had put together some notes, and those that were specifically related to Parks and Recreation, being transportation, Parks and Recreation, as well as the Senior Center. We went ahead and listed those out in one column. And in the second column, we provided information that there's either a handout in here, it will be discussed at the upcoming forum, or maybe a statement of fact, or maybe it needs more discussion as well if it's not, it doesn't have the right tone of what council was intending. So that's on the front and the back. And then a couple of the handouts that we provided. The first one is the A-Lift transportation. This is the transportation program that's offered free to Commerce City residents, like Mayor Pat mentioned, to and from the grocery, personal trips, medical appointments, recreation center, things like that. The second one is the Good Friends program. This is the scholarship program, and the application is here as well, so you can see that the senior special interest group, the senior group that put this together from the advisory committee members, spent about 3 months recently reviewing this and actually making some adjustments that they think will be more user-friendly to their peers. Here's one of the surveys that was conducted one-on-one from the seniors that they developed and helped create, as well as a general promotion packet that they thought would be helpful to be able to hand out at things like the neighborhood outreaches, if they're participating in a county event or something like that, so they have something that represents Commerce City and what we're doing. a sample flyer from the Health and Wellness Committee, the Health 101 component that was the first time we put that program on. This is the sample newsletter. It's mailed to the 650 individuals in direct mail and has a little more information at times, or maybe reminds people of a trip or an upcoming event to participate in. We went ahead and included some of the information regarding the birthday lunch in that telephone survey that Mary Pat mentioned. Some of the more specifics that we thought you'd like to have, as well as the announcement we had sent out to people participating. And the senior forum that we're planning on holding that I'll tell you about in our next steps. The very last part tucked in the back is actually the volunteer application form. We are currently accepting people for the 2011 Senior Advisory Committees, if you know somebody that would like to be a volunteer, or other general volunteers as well for Parks and Recreation in a variety of formats. We love matching people up with their skills and our programs. So a couple of the next steps. The first one, to help continue with the trend established and set by City Council when you held the Senior Summit on October 5th, we will be holding a senior and older adult forum. This will be December 14th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Recreation Center. City Council is invited and urged to come, as well as staff from the Parks and Recreation Department, as well as other departments where topics will be coming out so that they'll have somebody directly to speak to. Some of the topics that we would anticipate being discussed are listed, and we took these again from some of the notes that Councilman Moreno provided. This is not an inclusive list by any means, so if you have other items that you think are not on here that you would like us to prepare for, we are happy to do that. Or if you hear from other seniors or citizens, as well as we'll try to obviously have some topics of our own that we think have come back from the surveys that people might be interested in. And additionally, City Council had mentioned to staff creating or developing a Commerce City Commission for senior and older adults. So staff took that direction and started looking into some of the other cities that may have this type of a commission. And these are just our initial thoughts for your consideration, so we're not saying this is how it has to be by any means. That direction would come from you. But we did go ahead and review some of the other cities, like I mentioned, that have a commission for seniors and older adults. And a mission would be, could be something similar to this, of maintaining a high quality of life for seniors and older adults in Commerce City by fostering support new and existing programs. We listed some of the items that we think are important to seniors in Commerce City, and that are on that citywide piece for really helping people that need help and really providing some of those broader service. The commission may consist of 5 to 9 seniors appointed by City Council, 2 City Council members, a couple of business members, and staff in various departments. We didn't find a whole lot of just consistency as far as the seniors or how many. One city said, we have 5 because that's what works, and another city said we actually have council have 1 senior from each of their wards, trying to get a cross-section. So obviously that's up to you, but we put it in there. And that 2 of the cities actually said having business members they feel as valuable input to their groups. We're happy to provide any of that information to you as well. And we listed a purpose of advising the Commerce City Council on issues concerning and facing seniors and older adults in our community. And we would want to reaffirm that council as a body would want to move in this direction still at some point, so that at this time, share because the information is valuable. I'll turn it over for questions.
Yeah, I guess, again, we just appreciate the opportunity to share the information that we've shared with you tonight. And we recognize that there's a lot of information, not only in the presentation, but in the notebook that we presented. So at this time, we're happy to address any questions, comments that you might have for us this evening. Certainly, if you don't have anything that you have right away this evening, we're happy to address those following tonight's meeting.
Yes, in slide 17, the time on that says from 6 to 8. In our packet, the time says 5:30 to 7. I would suggest being seniors and daylight savings time is now gone. Let's have it earlier instead of later at 5:30 to 7 because one of the concerns of the seniors at the last summit was to get in and get out before it got dark. And this isn't going to happen this time. But I do believe that it'd rather be earlier than later. So if we could change that time from 6 to 8, and that's the only thing I have about that right now, and I'm just defer to anyone else who has any questions.
I guess tonight's presentation wasn't really directed to directly refer to some of the things that were brought up at the summit, and we plan to do that at the December 14th meeting. Is that right? That's when we really plan to address the issues that were brought up. Because I know that two of them were, some people said that they felt intimidated and not welcome at the rec center. What are we going to do to address that? I mean, there were 40 people there, and only one who was satisfied with the way things were being handled. Everybody else seemed to think that things about 2.5 to 3 years ago changed dramatically. Are we going to address why that happened? Try to get to the bottom of it. And because I heard a lot of very irritated people at that summit. You were there, Carol. I mean, you heard the same people that I heard, but these are things that need to be addressed. I don't see them being addressed either in tonight's presentation or at the December 14th. I think one issue was the kitchen, why we can't use the kitchen to make meals on a less expensive basis than having a catered meal brought in for $7.50. I guess I see the kitchen as one of the things that's going to be discussed, but it seems like there are a lot of gaps here, a lot of issues that were brought up at that summit that I don't see being addressed. I can't tell, none of us can tell the city manager what to do as far as this program.
Mr. Mayor, if I could address that real quick.
Go ahead.
I think the goal of this discussion tonight was to kind of give a general foundation of knowledge so that everybody understood what programs were offered and how they got to where they are today. So it's not to discount any of the input that was given because it is very important and very critical that somebody attended a meeting and voiced their concerns. So the goal was to kind of set that base foundation and then come to another summit inviting those same individuals and other seniors and specifically address those. Staff is prepared to go through each one of these, but I don't know if that's what the council is wanting tonight. If that's what you want, they can address them. But I think the goal is to go back to the same group and others and invite others to talk about these same issues, and then build upon that as some of the foundation to go forward with a commission.
Well, can I suggest that we have the December 14th meeting? I'm sure most of us will be there. There were 6 of us at the last summit. And then after that, we have another summit. from seniors, with the seniors, to find out what they think about what is being done about the complaints and issues that they brought up at our last summit. When was that? Was that in September or October?
It was first week of October, but I absolutely agree, and I think what may not have come out yet, and maybe I'm taking thunder away from Carolyn, I'm not sure, but I think the specific expectation, I believe, from the council as well as my office is that they will hold another summit and probably do an annual one at least from here on out. But I think one of the other thoughts is that this commission can take a number of these issues and actually also hold the summit through an objective group of seniors that run that program and actually have their summits as well. So I agree with that.
I'd like to ask Mr. Marino, when do you think it would be appropriate to have those Mr. Sure.
Let's more. This is going to be council decision. I will Mr. Marino and you.
I just want to hear his input into it.
His name is down here, and I'm sure he'll have something to say when we get to it.
Well, can you let him answer that? I don't think you speak for Mr. Marino, do you?
I do not, but I think what you're asking him needs to be decided by the council.
I'm asking him for his opinion. That his opinion is not decided by this.
So we're getting into private little groups instead of staying as a group together.
Well, this is his war.
Next person on the list is Ms. Carson. Okay.
I guess I have to say that I kind of agree with Mr. Benson that I don't feel that lots of the issues that were brought up that night have been addressed here. I'm reading down here, and I really don't feel that it is answers or anything. One of the things that I know that I thought about for days after we left that meeting was the story from seniors feeling that their safety might be in jeopardy when they were on the buses on tours. Heard stories of spare tires on vehicles, of drivers on their cell phones, and the calls that were being made to those drivers were coming from their supervisor. I know I'm correct in understanding CDL regulations, pre-trips and post-trips. If you have a bus that breaks down and find out there's not a spare tire on that, I'm going to assume there was no pre-trip done, because that bus cannot be put in service if it cannot pass that pre-trip inspection. I know there's laws that state you cannot drive a vehicle with passengers and be on a phone. So all of this was very concerning to me, and what I see here, that is something that I think could have been answered in a very different manner, that those are grounds for dismissal, and anytime an employee is seen behaving in those manners or not doing their job, there is termination, and that I would be guaranteed from this point forward, myself and this whole council, that these things will never happen again. Like I said, there are some things that are going to take longer to look at and to fix. That is not anything that's going to take any time to fix. I do not ever want to see another one of these buses put into service if there is not a correct pre-trip done on the bus. And if the bus was put into service, we know it's safe, that it has everything it needs on it. And no one driving passengers in these passenger vehicles should ever be on the phone. That means you don't even answer the phone for that person to ask you to pull the bus over so you can talk to them then. No phones. And so, yeah, I'm feeling like there's a lot of stuff that was not answered. I mean, it could have been answered in a lot better than what I'm seeing here. So I'm very disappointed with the presentation tonight.
Ms. Junior?
Yes, good evening and thank you. I have to agree with the other two. Many of the questions and concerns from the audience on that October 5th meeting weren't answered, but I'm also looking forward to this summit on the 14th, which I will be attending, which maybe some of those will be answered, and then the following one as well. I also, the Senior Advisory Committee, I would like them to maybe come quarterly and have, a 15, 20-minute presentation or update to see how things are going too. I don't know if that's a possibility, but it seemed as if the audience really thought that was a good idea. A question about the suggestion box. When people put complaints into that box, how far up the chain of staff do they go all the way to Carolyn? Do they stop at a certain staff member? And who do they get back with the individual?
With the suggestion box that Councilman said, it would depend on what's put in there. So if there's a concern about a program, we would elk bugling and they didn't see elk, I don't know. That would just, Mayor Pat Gallus would be the person that would review that, get that to the staff that planned that trip. Definitely, if there's contact information given, we would love to contact the person. That is very rare. If it's something that is about the recreation center, if it's something that is about staff potentially, if it's something that's city or more broad, myself would get those, or they would be passed on to Carolyn to be given to the appropriate person in the city.
So depending on what the suggestion or complaint would be determines on who it would be sent to.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that would help us know who should best be answering it or who should be the person in the back.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Marina?
If I could just elaborate on some of the discussion. Obviously the council asked me to consult with Mr. Flannery and kind of talk about what can be done. And I did meet with Mr. Flannery, and I thought it was actually a very productive meeting. The plan all along was, and we had some very high-level discussions about what can be done to address a lot of these issues. But the plan was always to have a second summit so we can make sure that we're headed in the right direction and that things are, that seniors are amenable to the things that we would put forward. So that was the plan all along. I do have, and I don't know, I saw we had a postcard here. I don't know if it's gone out or not. But I agree with Mr. Bullock that maybe a little earlier would be beneficial. And also, I think part of the reason why the seniors at the first summit felt so open and able to talk was because it was at a very neutral place. So I don't know if maybe we can have it at a neutral place again, just so we can, have an open and honest discussion.
The postcards have not gone out. You're the first ones to see them. So if you ditch them, then we're happy to make that earlier.
If I might ask a question,
Sure, go ahead.
are there suggestions in regards to a neutral place? Because in part, we chose the recreation center because folks are familiar with that. There's parking.
I mean, I thought the Derby Resource Center worked out very well. The newly renovated Ranger Library has a beautiful community room that I think can host a lot of people, so maybe we can look into that as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson?
I was kind of confused here. I wasn't at the summit. I wasn't able to make that night. And apparently these questions are from notes that Mr. Moreno has provided to the staff. And looking at some of the answers here, I feel like they've done a fairly good job. There's a lot of good answers here. And I think it would behoove us, rather than going off like we are, is to read the answers and try to understand what they mean, because there's a lot of good answers in here, and I think we need to build on that. I do appreciate your presentation. I thought it was very helpful. Answered a lot of questions for me, and I'm excited about the ABIT possibility there. To help Mrs. JD, the state law doesn't require anything about cell phones on buses, and CDE does. And the spare tires on buses, buses don't even come with a spare tire. It's never been part of the free trip, and I gave Carolyn a lot of help and information when they developed their free trips here. and pretty thorough. So I understand your concern about safety, since you've had a bus driver for 400 years, but these folks are trying hard as they can, and for the most part, they have volunteers driving, and you don't want to fire all your fighting volunteers. So I think they heard you, and they pass that on to the staff. But I appreciate this. Very good book. A lot of great information here. And I think it boils down to things like this communication. These summits that you've proposed are going to be helpful. Anytime you sit down with folks and talk about it, talk through their fears, talk through their issues, let people know they're being heard. From the looks of this page on the Senior Summit of October 5th, it looks to me like people were being heard. It looks like people thoughtfully thought through answers. There's a lot of things that we need to work with, and that's listed here. We need to work with, and so I appreciate that. It's not an easy thing to do, and like the rest of the council, I really want to make sure that our seniors are taken care of. They get a special all of us. I know they're very special to you too, because you put your heart into that community. So I think we're headed in the right direction, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in future summits.
Hi. First of all, I did want to thank you for the presentation that you made tonight. I was at the summit, and we were taking notes like crazy, trying to keep up with all the information, because there were a lot of seniors that were there, and they did voice a lot of concerns. And I can see where some members of this council think that, there's some information that hasn't been addressed, or there were some questions that have not been addressed yet. And so I am looking forward to the meeting on the 14th of December, because it looks like there's several items in here that will be addressed. There's some questions that came up that will be addressed on the 14th. So I'm looking forward to seeing some more of those things be addressed. And the seniors are very, very, very important to me. I love them. They're the heart and soul of the city. None of us would even be here if not for them. And so I think it's extremely important that we take care of them, we address their concerns, and we continue to move forward with, taking care of them and doing what we need to do to keep them happy and keep them, we want to keep them involved, we want to keep them healthy, we want to keep them safe. So I really hope on the 14th that we do get some more information to add to what we've got tonight. Thanks.
Mr. Bone, did you change your mind? My only suggestion was I agreed with Mr. Marino that neutral venue would be a lot better, because that's what was one of the things that put a lot of the seniors at ease, that they didn't want to be at the rec center. So if we could find a venue that would seat between 40 and 50, maybe 60 seniors, and use that venue and have a neutral one, either the Derby Resource Center. And I didn't get a chance to get over to the library on Saturday, but from what I heard, it had a very nice community room that would be able to fit that many. I would be, that's what I would suggest.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Benson?
Yes, I would agree with Mr. Bullock and Mr. Marino. I think that I leave it up to Mr. Marino about where we want to do that.
Here's my concern. I'm seeing it more and more. We identify a problem, whatever that problem is. We send a team out to discuss it and come back with answers, which they do. And then we want to solve everything tonight. We're making some advancement. I look at this and I see answers to everything that seems to be up here. But because we don't have a definite plan right this exact moment, that all of a sudden it's staff's problem. They're not doing it. I am probably one of the few people sitting on this council who shows up on birthday lunches and volunteers down there. And it's a beautiful event. And I don't see anybody down there coming to me, knowing that I'm the mayor, saying, you know what? This is all messed up. And they can come to me because I'm handing them their food. And now all of a sudden, it sounds like these people out here in front of us are doing not what we consider their best job. And that's what I want to get across. That may be the statement coming from some people on this council. But that is not the council's direction or the council's attitude. That has not been decided yet. My thing is lit up because everybody's going to want to pick up the mayor now, but that's fine. That's why I'm here, to kind of give some balance to what's going on. You know, we did the same thing with this rental certification. All of a sudden, it's a big problem. We start doing something about it, and it's not happening fast enough. This city has been in operation since the 50s. I have people out here in the audience telling me they rented houses in the 70s with no windows in them. We have come a long way in the last 5 or 6 years. I am proud of where we're going. Are we perfect? Is everybody feeling we are doing 100%? No. I don't think anybody on staff thinks they're doing 100%. But at some point, we have to say, you know what? This is a great first step. I don't understand what is going on anymore. We're not operating as a team anymore. We have these little divided little groups, and these little groups are saying, "Wham! I got a word from this person that the world is crappy, and so the world is crappy." I got 50,000 people out there that are part of this city. And you know what? Anybody that wants to come up and tell us where we're doing a bad job, I'm glad you have the nerve to do it. But give us a chance to come back and correct it. We've got to have the time. I think this is a terrific report for the amount of time you've had. I may be the only person who thinks this. Looking at the lights, I probably am. But I had to have my say. I'm with Mr. Johnson. I don't get it. Why is it that every complaint we get has to be a major complaint, and we have to get the impression that we can't fix it? I think we can. You know, I'm disappointed. I'm really, really disappointed. And, you know, I could have kept my mouth shut and we could have been out of here in 5 minutes. But, like Mr. Johnson, I'm a little concerned that we don't give staff the credit they do earn. I don't think they're doing a perfect job. You know? I don't think I'm doing a perfect job. Man, I'm making mistakes every single day. But we've got to give them credit for what we're doing and how we're changing. And that's what we're not doing. I'm the one out there, and I'm the center of the universe, and I'm the one you need to take care of. I've been to some of these events that they put on. They're phenomenal. The magician was wonderful. The wine and cheese parties were great. It was nice to be outside. You know, we've got to head in a direction, and we've got to make the steps to change. And it's not going to be overnight. Okay, now we're going to start with the numbers, and you can all beat up on the mayor. Mr. Moreno.
Well, I do appreciate the document that staff put together for us tonight. You know, looking at the answers to some of the concerns, I feel that some of them are good answers, some of them aren't that adequate, but that's why there's a provision on there that says that it's a discussion item at the next meeting. You know, I just think that, you know, the senior commission, for example, the idea that you put forth, I don't agree entirely with it. I don't disagree entirely with it, but I also want to solicit the feedback from those seniors that were at the first meeting to figure out, you know, where in the direction we all want to go. So I think it's a good idea to have the next meeting. and hopefully we can arrange for it to be at a neutral location. And I think that's where we'll get into the meat of a lot of the concerns that were brought up, and kind of present the direction staff and council would like to go, and the seniors can obviously voice their concerns, and we'll find common ground.
Ms. Teeter.
Yes, when you said that I want answers immediately, I don't. That's why I told you I'm very excited about the senior forum, and I will tell the audience now what I told the audience that evening. I did not know all of these problems were taking place in the senior center. We have some very good information. I like many of the answers. But as for the rec center, I think it's absolutely the best one in the whole state of Colorado, and I shared that with you that night. Up there where I work out, and now we have people throughout the metro area coming to that center because of the friendly staff like Janet, the weights maintained, the equipment and everything. So I do have something positive to say, but also I'm looking forward to these next two summits. I think more of the answers and more communication that will resolve a lot more matters. Thank you.
I understand your concern, Mr. Mayor, and I don't think we're beating up on you. And it was mentioned in the beginning that it's going to be a forum on the 14th, and then a follow-up of that same forum to see what the seniors actually, how they feel about what has been presented. But you not being there and not seeing the anguish on a lot of the seniors' face, Tony not being there and just sitting here and reading from a piece of paper, you aren't getting the full charge of what happened that evening. And I really think that in order for you to make those kind of statements, be at those events and see what those seniors are, feel their pain, because there was pain that evening. And all 6 of us that were there, we understood it, and we immediately brought it back to the city manager. And we aren't asking for instant right answers. What we're asking for are good, concerned answers that are going to alleviate the problems and keep everybody happy without any extra expense. So, I mean, I don't feel that you should ever feel that this council is beating up on you. And I don't feel that we're going into different groups. I feel that this council is probably solidifying more than it's been in the last year. But, I mean, that's just my opinion. But I do trust that you will be at the forum on the 14th and the follow-up one, and you'll be able to experience it for yourself.
Mr. Benson.
Well, I agree with what Mr. Bowen just said, and with all due respect to Mr. Johnson and Mr. Natal, I would submit that if you had been there, and I'm sure you had a good reason not to be there, we all have other things to do, but if you had been there, I think you might feel a little bit differently about what you said tonight.
Mr. McInerney, change your mind?
I personally said that I was staying on business the week of the forum and regularly wasn't able to attend. I got the distinct sense that there were legitimate issues, and I'm eager to hear the dialogue at the upcoming forum. But I do have constructive feedback from my peers on council. We don't show up every day and put in 10 and 12 hours a day supporting our seniors. Sure, we do a lot. We do an awful lot, but at the same time, we haven't made a career choice that puts us in the direct service of our community every single day. And it breaks my heart to sit here and hear the level of critique on our staff. We cannot lead in a positive and constructive manner if that's the tone in which we undertake every problem that comes forward. And I will actually agree with the mayor for a minute that it does seem like we continue to take that tone when a problem faces us. We need to be the example in how we facilitate a constructive dialogue toward solving a real problem. Discover the problem, agree that it's the problem, agree toward a course of action, and work in a constructive fashion to do so. You don't throw stones at people that are going to turn around and try and solve the problem for you. So, yes, I get the distinct sense that there are real challenges that we face and need to solve for. But you don't you don't solve them by torturing the people that are here to help solve the problems for you. So, again, thank you for the update tonight. I understand as the document clearly states this is initial information. I look forward to the more thorough update and dialogue with our community on the 14th. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Appreciate you coming. Next item on the agenda is...
Mayor, before you leave that, I just wanted to make a statement. Apparently, some person in the audience signed up to speak on this item, and as council knows, this item is a study item, not for action, and so under your policy, you allow people to speak when you have an action item on the agenda, but you need to make a special concession if you're going to allow citizens to speak on a study item. So I want to bring it to your attention that there is a person in the audience who asked to speak on this item, but it's not in keeping with your policy, so you would certainly be correct in moving on to the next agenda item. But on the other hand, if you chose to allow someone to speak, it would take approval by the council to do that. Otherwise, it's out of order.
Okay. Mr. Benson?
Yes, did this person forego their right to speak at citizen communication, thinking that they were going to be able to speak now?
Mr. Benson, in response to issues that have arisen or challenges that have arisen with this council, I was asked to provide, we now provide 2 sign-up sheets at the beginning of the evening. We provide one for citizen communication that is in keeping with citizen communication for non-agenda items. In review of your council policies, the council policy allows for, as Mr. Gaylor said, allows for discussion on action items, as in your council policy. So what we have done is we have provided a second sheet to allow council to know when citizens want to speak. It is then council's decision to whether or not they want to allow that person to speak or not. And we did that because one of the issues that came up previously was I was approached and somebody said to me, well, how does council know that I even want to speak on an item? Because there's no sign-up sheet for it. So in order to remedy that situation, we have provided a sign-up sheet for agenda items, and then council can make the decision on whether or not it meets your council policy, it does not meet your council policy, or whether or not you want to allow them to speak.
Yeah, the second sheet, though, is for action items that identifies that.
It does identify that.
Well, I wonder if everybody understands the difference between an action item and a study item. Because it seems to me like somebody might have been misled in thinking, well, I'm signing up for this, when they could have signed up for citizen communication and been absolutely guaranteed a right to speak, and now they missed that opportunity, and they signed up thinking that they were going to get to speak. I don't think that's right, and I would ask that the council approve having this person be allowed to speak. Mr. Bullock?
I'm going to disagree with Mr. Benson. I would say that if this is a study item and we never changed our policy for study items before, and let's adhere to that. But if the person wants to come next week and speak in citizens communication regarding this, that would be the appropriate time. And I know it may sound like we're being, for lack of a better word, hard asses, but it is our policy, and if we start breaking our policy now, then we can never adhere to it down the road, because once you open the door, you can't close it for anybody else down the road. So that's just my opinion on my seat on council, that I would say no. I would open for the rest of the council to give their opinion on this item. Mr. Marino?
I know it is detracting from our policy, but in general, I feel that if citizens have taken the time to be here tonight, that they should be afforded the ability to speak. So I would be in favor of allowing that citizen to speak.
Ms. Carson?
I also am in favor of letting that citizen speak. It might be confusing for citizens to know which sheet they need to sign, but their intent was to speak, and if they come to speak to council, I think they should be granted that.
Mr. Benson?
Yeah, Mr. Bullock, I certainly agree with you that we have rules and we need to follow them, but I think that there may have been somebody was misled, not intentionally misled, but I think that just because of the way that our procedures work, they were subjectively misled into thinking that they were going to be able to speak, and instead of signing up for citizen communication, they signed up on the other sheet. That's the point that I'm making here. And I have made a motion that we allow this person to speak. Ms. Mayor?
Yes, I would agree that we normally should adhere to our policies and try to keep our meetings in, their normal orderly fashion, but I do believe that we should allow this individual to come forward this evening and speak. It is a little bit confusing as to how the sign-up sheets work, and now that we have clarification, I'm sure that we'll be able to work with that in the future, but I definitely think we should allow the individual to come and speak tonight. Thanks.
A question, Ms. Bowers, will they be limited to 3 minutes as the rest of the citizens' communications would be?
There's no policy on that, Councilman Teeter, so that would get to the council.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to allow
I would like to allow 3 minutes.
I believe there's a motion on the floor, so moving around in this fashion is inappropriate.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to allow the speaker to speak. Do I have a second from Mrs. Mayor?
Second motion.
Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Rule of order, we still need discussion before we
Okay,
vote.
discussion.
After we've seconded, maybe
You're
we
correct.
have more discussion.
You're correct. So I have a motion and a second discussion, Mr. Bullock.
I've already had my discussion with Mr. Johnson and Mr. McDonald.
Either of you have discussion? Okay, I have no further discussion.
Okay, and you've hit 5 of them anyway, so 5 is the magic number.
Yes.
So they allow
It's
them
done.
to speak.
Yes. One person on the list is Sandra Brothers. Come forward, please. State your name and address for the record.
So the minutes would show a vote and pass.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Sandra Carruthers. I live at 6951 Kearney Street. I'm a senior, and it's obvious I'm a novice when it comes to what council procedures are with this. I was told that I could sign up the action list to make comments about the presentation that's just been made. I don't need to take 3 minutes. I'll certainly be willing to come back next week and speak. I do have a question, however, in terms of how you're going to let seniors know about the December 14th meeting.
Mr. Flannery, I'm assuming it's a postcard, but I don't want to make that.
I can probably defer to Carolyn, but I'm thinking that through the senior programs, through the postcards, through their email lists or mailing lists.
And we will certainly through all of our everyday channels, postcards. We also have the monthly newsletter that we mentioned that is delivered to 600 seniors, either direct mail or via the birthday lunch. We also have a birthday lunch tomorrow, which we can make an announcement. We also find that once we let some of the folks that are here this evening know that information, the word also spreads. So we'll do our best to make sure that gets out to everyone. What we need to do very quickly here is find a location.
The city attorneys just advised me I don't have to wait till next week. They would approve giving me 3 minutes. So, I just want to indicate that the presentation that was made on the Senior Center tonight, I think it gave a good portrayal of the history of the center. I think it gave a good picture of what the Senior Center is or maybe should be. I think it presents a positive image, and I think it could be a very good tool, maybe modified as an outreach tool for us to seek to get new 62-plus members and to get back some of our former members that are no longer active. We have had a drastic drop in our direct participation in the last 2 or 3 years, and we need to do whatever we can to address that trend. I was also going to briefly say The council probably knows that the senior center has had a general advisory committee for many years, and it worked very well. Staff has changed the format recently to 3 separate committees that are staffed by or chaired by staff members. I serve on the outreach committee, and we've definitely had some good positive things come out of that, and I think we'll be moving forward with those. The presentation gave a pretty good synopsis of some of the things that we've done. I just wanted to kind of highlight the Good Friends program. We did have a subcommittee to review that. This is a financial assistance program to help all seniors have more access to some of our activities. I think we did a real good job of reviewing and revising the program guidelines. We've come up with a very good, excellent program brochure and application piece that I think we can certainly use, and we're going to come up with a promotion plan to get the word out more to our seniors that that's available. I think that's one excellent outcome of our committee. It mentioned the holiday meals project, and that is a spatial project, and it came from the old advisory committee, and it continues under the pressure. And I also think that our outreach survey that we developed has real potential. It's to find out what people are interested in, what we can do to make them more accessible to our programs and activities. And I think it can be used as a real tool to get 62 and plus members involved, new ones, get the old ones back active, get them hooked. That's what it has as a title. And we have just started rolling that out, and we do have a plan. I guess I just want to make the point with our new advisory committee formats. We do need to work on improving our intercommunication between the 3 committees. We need to improve communication to our general senior population and get input from them. Like I said, we've had a real drop in participation, and we need to do whatever we can to get that back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moreno?
Just wanted to say, just going along with what Carolyn said earlier, if the seniors in the audience, and thank you for being here tonight, if you can help us out by passing the word. If the last senior summit was any indication of your success on that front, I'd very much like to employ your services for my next ward meeting, because the turnout was fantastic at the last senior summit.
Quickly, this is the information that I do like to hear, and she had a lot of that she brought forward to us. That's why I said even quarterly, if we could have somebody from that committee come forward and inform us on the happenings. A lot of what she said was positive too. So I thank you for coming up and sharing that with us.
Mr. Bullock?
I just want to thank all the seniors in the audience for taking your time out this evening. I know a lot of you don't like to drive at night. A lot of you don't want to sit here at night and use your valuable time when you could be sitting there watching How I Met Your Mother. But I am so happy that you're here this evening, and we're going to make all these meetings senior friendly for you. So thank you for showing up this evening.
Thank you. And next item is long-range financial plan, tracking of expenditures. Mr. Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I believe Roger Kuhlberg.
Okay.
I saw him sitting there today.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Wait just a moment while Jason gets set up. What I'll be covering this evening is giving you a quick overview of the revenue and expenditure estimations that have been done for the next 10 years. And what we have is basically a number of steps that we'll be going through for the long-range financial plan. And so this is the first one that deals with two of the chapters, one dealing with revenues and the other dealing with operating costs. Then what happens after that is there'll be a presentation on drainage and stormwater, followed by one on city facilities, and then one on transportation, followed by open space, parks, recreation, and trails. And then finally, the last one is on fiscal policy and strategy recommendation. And that chapter is developed as the other chapters are discussed with council and with management. So that's an ongoing process. Then turning first to the revenue estimates. If revenues had continued to grow at the rate seen from 2000 to 2006, the city's revenues today would be in the neighborhood of 65 to 70 million. That's a substantial difference than what we're seeing presently. We know there will be growth in the next decade. The operative question is how much. I used two terms, and I don't know if those are really appropriate. Those of you in the business world may have better terms to use, but I'm calling it organic growth and acquired growth. The organic growth I'm calling or labeling that as existing businesses will continue to see growth in their business, calling that organic growth. Acquired growth would be for the new businesses that move here to Commerce City or that expand an existing operation into a new endeavor. The low revenue estimate assumes only organic growth by existing businesses. On the other hand, the middle and high revenue estimates assume there will also be acquired growth by new businesses. So let's first look at the historic revenues. We have taxes, licenses and permits, intergovernmental, charges for service, fines and forfeitures, miscellaneous transfers in, and that is our total. So in the year 2000, our total in the general fund was 24 million. Flash forward to 2009, it's at 42 million. That represents 8.5% average growth for those 10 years. So 8.5%. Now obviously it's gone up and it's gone down. The high point was in 2006 at 51.2 million. And then it's decreased down to 42.6 million in 2009. So that's our historical actual expenditures. Our actual revenues, I'm sorry. So that's the line chart showing what happened there. Again, the high was in 2006 and then it dropped off from there in 2009. So using that, the 2000 to 2009 revenues increased by 8.5% per year. If you look at the 2000 to 2006 average annual growth, that was 11.4%. And then 2006 to 2009 declined at an average of 2.6%. Now what we did, we have an ultra-low estimate, and that is basically averaging out for the 10-year period of 2011 to 2020 at 3.1%. The low estimate is 6.1%, the middle estimate is 8%, and the high estimate is 9.9%. Again, I'm pointing back to our actual annual average increase was 8.5 for the previous decade. And then our high growth era was 11.4. So you can see our high estimate is slightly higher than our actual decade of growth, but it's lower than the high growth period. So that gives you the context of the numbers that we're using going forward. So the ultra low, basically it moves from 45.5 million in 2011, that's our actual budget, what we're estimating for budget, to 52.5 million in 2020, 3.1% growth. That's ultra low. The estimated low revenues, growing at 6.2%, go from 45.5 million to 64.6 $6 million by 2020. The mill revenues grow from that $45.5 million to $72.7 million by 2020 at 8% per year. And then the higher revenues grow from $45.5 million to $82.3 million, 9.9% increase. Now these are estimates. And as you know, it's tough to estimate even revenues for the coming year. So again, we have to use some assumptions. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question on the each of these estimate tracks, if you will. Is there a sort of essentially characterization of each of those tracks? What goes into the analysis that says this is the ultra low? What are the factors that were considered that would help me understand the likelihood of any one track being the track that we take over the coming decade? I would suggest that we would have different scenarios, but to me, we're missing the stimulus for each of those to understand why or what the likelihood of each of those might be.
Well, when we get into the more of the in-depth analysis, we can provide all of those assumptions.
Okay.
If you look at the various lines here, for example, taxes, the lion's share of taxes is going to be the sales and use tax. So what happens with the national economy, what happens with the local economy has a tremendous impact on that bulk of the tax revenue that comes in. And on the high estimate, that's at 9.1%. Now, licenses and permits, that one's much higher, and the reason for that is that includes building permits. So the high revenue estimate includes the assumption that there's going to be an increase in building construction again, that the residential market will pick up. The numbers we used for the building permits are out of the comprehensive plan. There's a, excuse me, as I recall, there's a low and a high estimate that was made. In working with the Community Development Department, they have updated that to be a low, medium, and a high. And that's what we've used here for our low, medium, and high revenue estimations. Excuse me. Intergovernmental, the assumption there is that the state of Colorado gets its financial house in order and does not chop back on the revenue that they share with local governments. And that may be a very big assumption, but at the same time, the amount of money that we receive from intergovernmental is relatively small compared to our other revenue sources, particularly the tax sources. Fines and forfeitures is pretty well immune from the economy. What drives that is population and also the amount of enforcement. So the composition and the size of the traffic unit, for example, in the police department, has a huge impact on that number. But again, it's relatively small. All of these other numbers are relatively small compared to the tax line. So we're not prepared to get into all of the assumptions tonight, but if you want us to go dig into that deeper, we certainly can.
And obviously not tonight, but I think to just have the numbers presented without a narrative or without that backing is not helpful to me. So it would be great if when we come back to this, that we do have some key assumptions made about each of those projections. So when we look at the ultra low, what are the key factors that might cause that ultra low projection to be a reality? What are the projections that go into, or the assumptions that go into the ultra high? I guess said differently, I almost look at it as you're playing out several eventualities based on some conditions, right? Your modeling is telling you these are potentially realistic paths that our revenue could take. As a council, as a body that needs to set policy and strategy and can help guide where we're going, I guess I look at this as a tool to say, when we sit down to our planning retreat this spring, and we look at your projections, we need to keep in mind what some of your key assumptions are. And if there are things that we can do from a policy perspective or give extra guidance to Mr. Flannery and the economic development team to focus on certain sort of strategy, IDR, incentive plans to help raise the likelihood that we do draw in new business, I'd like to see some of that data present to help round out the understanding of the data and treat it more like a tool than just these are 5 possible tracks that we could could possibly go on.
Maybe I can jump in a little bit. Absolutely, 100%. And I think what you see in these estimates is just the numbers and not some of the assumptions that go with them. There's so many variables, obviously, that go with all of these. And very unlikely you'll ever see me come to you with a recommendation that we're in any of the high ratings. I think if anything we've learned from RTD is you can be very positive in your estimates, and the reality is sometimes a lot less, and that's not a position we want to be in. So if anything, you'll see us at the ultra low. And that's just an assumption that we're going in with. But I think when you look at what's the legislature going to do through, I mean, how many more 60, 61, 101s are going to be? When are they going to start? I don't even want to mention it because somebody might actually pass it down to the state. But, you know, they look at pools of money that are there, like highway user funds, and say, well, there's a big fund there, let's dip into it and pay another state department with that. You know, there's a number of funds that are created in the state that are impacted through the legislative process, so we're very cognizant of that. I think, you know, as we see growth, we may have a major development occur that actually changes some of the picture. But maybe also there's incentives as part of that aren't paid back for 5 or 10 years. So, but to get back to your specific comment about the retreat, this is the very conversation we had. What I want to see through this process is the departments looking at this now. Obviously, 10 years is a crystal ball, and the further you get out, the less accurate you get. But what this is a tool on an annual basis that the departments can do their projections as their own departmental budget. And then they measure themselves each year as part of that process so that they can continuously update that. So when we get out in 2020, there'll be a lot less work to be done because they'll already be looking at that time. But to tie it back into the budget retreats where you can actually see what exactly the gaps are. And I know maybe that's going to be covered here, but it's probably a good time to mention. But you'll see what types of gaps are there through our projections. And then the council will have real clear opportunity to give direction on budget priorities. So that's already at work. Your priorities from last retreat in I think it was January, February, are being implemented as we go along through this year. So it'll be now a conveyor belt of your directives and what you want to see in your budget, in the budget. And you can then have a menu of lists of here's what we think we want to spend or put our emphasis on XYZ road or XYZ project. And that is intended to be the loop. So there's a lot of narrative behind this that you're not seeing that we'll make sure we get through.
Appreciate that. Thanks, guys.
On the permits, taxes, and everything, like building permits, is it factored in the incentives that we do for new businesses coming in, and some of them, the incentives to incentivize them to not have permit of building? Do we, is that in the same process, that these numbers?
We did not factor in incentives in the future numbers since it's a limited term program. Now, if the council chooses to change that, then it certainly will have to take that into consideration with these projections.
Okay.
So this is the comparison of these four trend lines, these four estimations. The ultra low, of course, is that bottom line, and then we have the low, the medium, and the high. Just a clarification of the terminology. We first developed the low, medium, and high, and then after meeting with the city manager, deputy city managers, we were asked to also provide an ultra low one, which kind of is a worst case scenario. And hopefully we don't see that, but as you'll see later, it does have a significant impact on our future planning. Here's a look at the actual, and then incorporating the estimation, the trend line going out. So So you can see again, from 2000 to 2006, there was a very steep incline, and then of course it dropped. Now for 2010, it leveled off, and in fact, just saw some additional numbers today. I think that estimate is low, and 2010 will be much more positive than we estimated. 2011 is the budget estimate that was just put in the recently adopted budget, and then of course 2012 is the budget plan that was incorporated in with the 2011 budget. So the estimations that were made continue on from that 2012 number, and so you can see the divergence of those four lines. So here's some comments on the revenue estimates. The estimates include only the recurring portion of the one-time revenues. And you say that sounds confusingly contradictory. Let me tell you what I mean. We budget each year a portion of the one-time revenues because we always see that base amount come in every year. So we just define that as recurring, even though it's one-time audit, tax audit revenue. The portion that we have not included are the large sales and use tax assessments and or settlements that are made by taxpayers. So this year we had 3 very large settlements that occurred. Those, for example, are not included in the projection going forward. The ultra-low estimate, as I said before, provides a worst-case scenario. What it does is it places the city in a position of scrambling to try to maintain the services that we currently have. And it will very likely require cuts to services, and that will become obvious here in a minute. The low estimate assumes no to very little expansion in the number of businesses, and that's one that results in the 6.2% growth. The middle estimate includes both growth within existing businesses and modest expansion in the number of businesses. The high estimate is the upside, but it is also still lower than the 2000 to 2006 growth rate. The middle and high estimates provide money for adding employees, increasing services, adding new programs, and capital projects. Now, all city revenues are affected to varying degrees by the national economy. For example, the sales tax falls or rises as retail sales change. Now, the good thing is Commerce City is not reliant on big box retail. Our only big box is the Walmart store. So we are less vulnerable to economic shocks than many of our neighbors who have seen dramatic declines in their large retailers' sales. Use tax falls or rises as businesses contract or expand on their equipment purchases. We have a very diverse industrial base, business base here, and that provides us a significant amount of stability. We also receive a large portion of our sales and use tax from the use tax. The franchise tax is more volatile. It rises or falls with utility sales and with telecommunication purchases. Property tax changes are delayed. You may have a drop or an increase in property market values, and those are reflected in the assessor's valuations. The assessor's valuations determine the assessed value, and then taxes are collected in the following year after they issue their assessed value. So what happens then is property taxes fall much later, but they also increase much later than the economy. And so there will be several years where we will probably see our individual property tax fall because our property, our residential property, has fallen in value. And then after that, we will see it start climbing back up. As I mentioned before, municipal court claims are fairly stable, and those are affected more by the police traffic unit staffing than they are by the economy. Major source of permit revenue is our building permits, and that's affected by the housing market, that's affected by business expansions, and it's also affected by new business location decisions. The investment earnings that we receive are determined by market interest rates, which are affected by the Federal Reserve Bank and by market expectations regarding inflation and risk. Intergovernmental revenues are determined by the state legislature are the highway users tax, and there the legislature may change the revenue sharing formula. It's set by law, but they can amend that code. We receive about $1.5 million from that, so that part is vulnerable. Motor vehicle registrations, again, the legislature could change that revenue sharing formula, but that's only $160,000 per year. Cigarette tax, the legislature could also change that revenue sharing formula, but that's only $120,000 per year. And that's been declining every year, almost every year for the last 10 years. So we'll see what happens in the next 10 years. There's one other state intergovernmental revenue, and that's the lottery revenue, but that's not part of the general fund. The legislature, as I understand it, may also amend the Colorado revised statutes to change that revenue sharing formula. That's $366,000 per year. We also receive some intergovernmental revenues from Adams County, and those can be determined to some extent by the Adams County Commissioners. The road and bridge tax, they can't change the distribution formula, but what they can do is they can reduce the road and bridge mill levy and increase the general fund mill levy. So what that would do is it would reduce the road and bridge money that's coming in and would increase the county's general fund. And by that way, they can shift money from the cities to the county. Transportation tax comes from Adams County. That's based on the sales tax. The commissioners cannot change that revenue sharing formula since that was set by the ballot question that the voters approved. That's also not part of the general fund. It goes directly to our capital improvement fund. The open space tax, also not part of the general fund. My understanding is that revenue sharing formula could be changed. That's $255,000 per year. So our greatest vulnerability in the intergovernmental sector is that which could be determined by the state legislature, given the fact that the state of Colorado has financial problems. So the money at risk basically is 1.7, almost 1.8 million. So all we can do at this point is be aware of that and monitor it, basically. Turning to the expenditure history, in 2000, our expenditures in the general fund, and this is consolidating Parks and Recreation, Sales and Use Tax Fund, and the city's street and bridge fund into the general fund, since we did that officially 2 years ago. In the year 2000, it was $16.2 million, and by 2009, that had grown to 38.3, almost 38.4 million. You see the line there showing the actual expenditures. That was an annualized growth of 13.5%. Now, if you recall, the expenditures or the revenues grew at a smaller rate, and we'll show that comparison here in a minute. So based on that, the projection for expenditures in the general fund is that it will grow from the 2010 budget of $43.3 million to $62.8 million by the year 2020. 5.5% growth annualized. And then the line is showing that growth. So then, looking at the revenue lines and incorporating the expenditure line, we can see the comparison. The low expenditure line tracks the low revenue line very closely. Now what that means is, if you recall, I said that the low expenditure line and low revenue line would not allow the addition of new employees, extend programs or additional programs, and would not provide money for capital projects. So it's a status quo. It's just basically maintaining what we have. That's the only expenditure estimate we've prepared so far. As the city manager indicated in his comments, the intent is to work with the departments to work on medium and high expenditure projections for the next 10 years. And as I mentioned, the low line just maintains existing operation. Sure.
I'd like to just note that we're looking at a 10-year long-range financial plan, and it seems like just barely coming out of the worst economic downturn in the recent century. So, I think the beauty about these things is that they're not static, and that they are a dynamic process that is looked at each year. So when you look at, you want us, and I think the public wants us to be conservative when we look at all of these numbers. And I think each year when we come to you, we look at how we can make that work. But these numbers do seem very low, and the trajectory of that growth incline is very low. But it's because we are based on where we're at now in the economy. And if the economy takes an upturn, we would adjust for that and come back to you and have those discussions. So that isn't just in a vacuum that the plan is made.
Since you jumped in, Mr. McIntyre, if you want to get in now.
Yeah, I don't know if Mr. Greenwood, this is the Twitter, even more slides. So I guess I'm going to wait and see the edit. Okay.
The final point I wanted to make here is the medium and high expenditure estimates will incorporate the City Council's strategic plan. And I'd like to let that soak in for a second. What that implies is that the low expenditure line doesn't incorporate much of the Council's strategic plan, because it just maintains what we have now. Now, that may be a faulty assumption, and that's where we need your guidance as well. But the point is, we have existing operations, and the low revenue line will only cover those existing operations. It won't pay for additional programs. It won't pay for additional employees. So if that's not the Council's intent, then we would need to look at eliminating some existing programs in order to start new programs, if that were the Council's desire. The low estimate assumes, as I said, the existing operation and no major capital projects. However, what we did not incorporate into our low revenue projection are the one-time dollars, as I mentioned before. So the one-time dollars would still be available. Those one-time tax audits, settlements, those may be able to fund one or more large capital projects. But remember, if I were in Japan, I'd be talking about the yin and the yang, and have to keep everything in balance. We can spend a lot on capital projects and not have the operating money to maintain or to fund the operation of that capital project. A recreation center is an example. We may have the capital money there to fund it, but we may not have the ongoing annual operating money to be able to operate. So that's where we need to keep things in balance between the capital budget and the operating budget. Last item I wanted to cover with you is what's next. As I mentioned at the beginning, the next presentation will be on drainage and stormwater, and then we'll discuss city facilities, transportation, plan and improvements, the open space parks, recreation and trails, and then finally get into the fiscal policy and strategy recommendations that will address what needs to happen in order to fund operations and address all the capital needs that are out there. So these next four presentations deal primarily with capital needs and that funding. And then the final presentation will deal with that balance between the capital budget and the operating budget. And that concludes my remarks. So, Councilman Avenir,
Thank you. Yeah, two questions. On the projections, early on the comments seem to focus on the factor that business growth plays and how aggressive business growth is through the projection period. obviously relative to revenues. What I didn't see reflected on the expenditure side is what happens if we have a disproportionate amount of residential growth versus business growth. Right now we have a really pleasant balance by comparison to many of our neighbors. If we were to go through a period where, for example, our business growth were to go flat or be very low, and our residential growth would spike, if we see housing explode in the north, but we don't see complementary primary employment show up, that obviously suggests a much different picture from an expenditures perspective and the cost of providing the services in that regard. So is that the next layer of detail in your analysis and what we would see there as far as the projection goes? Or I guess ultimately, maybe just I'll throw my second question out and then come back. At what point does the plan here tie together directly with our economic development strategic plan and our transportation strategic plans in particular? In that I'd like to be able to understand, for example, when we lay out in the ED plan, ideally what we want to see happen, how can we use this financial strategic plan, long-term financial plan, to enable, make those things happen? To me, again, I'm trying to look at this as a tool. So, for example, if there is key investment necessary to trigger that growth, it's never going to happen if we don't do the right things. How does this long-range financial plan identify for us those levers in the plan? I'll stop and see if that makes any sense.
Let me answer the first question first. If, for example, if there is substantial residential growth again and we don't see the associated business growth that we need, then we have a problem because our expenditures will have to go up because basically residential requires service and doesn't provide the revenue source. Under our taxing model that we have here in Colorado, it doesn't provide the taxing source that provides enough revenue to support the services for the residential. So it requires the business. And so we will be out of alignment because we need the same type of balance there between residential and business as we do between our capital projects and our operating budget. And so, at the point, we need enough residential to stimulate the commercial growth, particularly in the north range, because you have to have a certain minimum density or number of rooftops in order to justify businesses moving in. But, as a finance guy, I could just stand here and say, well, what we need to do then is shut off residential after that tipping point and concentrate on industrial business only and just do commercial. Well, that's easy for me to say, that's obviously not practical. But from a financial standpoint, that would be the best scenario for the city.
Well, I'm not your financial guy. And I absolutely think that the way we approach this is methodical in the way that departments look at each one of their components and how they fit in. And so we look at theirs as a trend line. And I could envision a point where maybe the council says, actually we like the PD's middle budget line, and so we'd like to take that middle projection line for them, and maybe ED look at the same type of scenario, and then everybody else kind of say on the low number. And these are just terms. But the way I look at this plan, and the reason I say that the dynamic of it in the long term and the beauty of it in the short term is to be able to change your path. So in the long term financial plan, I compare that to a comprehensive plan with the land use. And that the short term budget process is kind of like the implementation and zoning. So I think when Mr. Tinklenberg and I met a few weeks ago, and I talked about the departments, his eyes widened a little bit, like, But I'm not going to ask the departments to go 10 years. I mean, they're going to have to do a 10-year projection, but I think the more accurate numbers are going to be in the 3 to 5 year period. And that's really where we want to focus. And I think after that, it gets really crystal ball. So I think when we look at how this all rolls together, I think we really look at the short and long term. But how we implement it is kind of a menu of different issues. And so if there is a big item on the horizon, we may be coming to you and saying, I think in a year from now, we may be wanting to look at a ballot measure. And by all means, I'm not suggesting that. But if there is something on the horizon that is of significance that we may need to go to a voters on, then we want to know that well in advance and not make that decision in a 2-month period in front of an election. Even though that might be a situation that occurs, we want to be able to foretell that a year and a half in advance.
And thank you. And the two sets of comments tie back, and that's really where I was going. How do we use the data and these exercises that we've gone through for each of these plans as better planning tools, so that what we're worried about and what we're really spending our time on, a more substantial portion of our time is really reflecting on the policy decisions that we're making and how those influence the realization of any of these potential plans. So we're not having our future dictated to us, but rather, to the extent we can, trying to dictate the future. And so that's really where I'm hoping we end up getting to. And I love the idea of having those menus, if you will, or those projections that we can assemble and look at the shorter term, next year, 2-year, 3-year planning cycles and really reflect intently on, if we don't generate revenue in the next 2 years, this is what it's going to spell for us, right? Meaning, it may be time to have the discussion we don't want to have about raising a tax or raising a fee, but we need to be able to have a tool set that lets us reflect on those things in a much more intelligent way than I think we have, at least in my tenure. I think we're getting every day we're getting closer to that, and it feels like that's where you're taking us, if I hear it correctly.
That's the intent. And these revenue estimates and expenditure estimates are intended to be a foundation, if you will. But don't think of it as poured concrete foundation. These are going to be concrete blocks that we can pick up and move as council wants to direct how the structure should look. And so when we get to the policy analysis and fiscal strategy recommendation part, that's where it's going to take that ongoing dialogue, and that's where we integrate things like the ED strategic plan. How does that support this, and how does it modify this? And depending on the assumptions you want to put in place there, that will impact these financial estimations that we need. So again, I'm presenting this as basically background information, and we're intending it, just for your information at this point. And there's going to be a lot of dialogue. And currently, the plan, the schedule of presentations just calls for one presentation regarding strategies and policies. It may be that you want an ongoing dialogue for a couple months. That's your call, certainly. I just drew it up. Ideal world, I present it to you, and you say, oh, A, B, and D. Those are the ones we want, and we're on our way. It's not that easy to realize.
I appreciate that. Yeah, great information tonight. I look forward to the ongoing discussion, and selfishly, I'd love to see more of a progressive discussion once we get more of the detail in hand and start to relay some of that information. I'll stop talking. Mr. Bullock?
Yes, Roger, do you have this presentation in a format that you could hand out to me? I really, especially the beginning part of it where it shows the months where you're going to give different presentations and different revenue sources. It's just like Jason said, it's a tool, but I like to hold the tool and be able to look at it and know what's coming down the road, because it is a crystal ball. And I
will email it to you after this meeting also.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is administrative council business. Remember, this is not reports. It's something we need action from the council. Before I go to anybody else, I want to bring up two things. The meeting for the 22nd. Presently, we have nothing on the agenda. Correct. We have a fifth Monday, which is also off, which is the 29th. And if I'm looking at the calendar correct, our meeting on the 6th, including the GID, is only listed for an hour and a half. So that one still has room for items that they're needed. But I would need a motion from the council to cancel the meeting of the 22nd. Ms. Snyder?
Yes, I make the motion to cancel. Can I do them both together, or do I have to do them one at a time?
Well, actually, the fifth one we wouldn't do anyway. So it's just the 22nd.
Okay, then I make a motion to cancel the meeting of the 22nd.
Okay, and Ms. Teeter?
Yes, second motion, that's Monday Night Football. Good.
Okay, discussion, Ms. Marino?
Just want to make sure we're okay in terms of the schedule or...
Hour and a half on December 6th, including the GID meeting.
Oh, you're doing your homework. All right.
I wasn't going to bring it forward unless I knew I could guarantee that. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't come up with something, but if you take an hour and a half, including GID, they could add a number of topics. Okay, discussion over. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. You know, I really miss Mr. Lewis because he always said he liked coming here on Monday. So, Mr. Flannery, we will cancel the 22nd, and the 29th being the 5th Monday. We won't have a meeting, so our next meeting will be December 6th. Does anyone else have any administrative council business tonight?
Yes.
Mr. Bullock?
Yes, there are 3 council members that need to get in the money for your Christmas tree. $11.12 or $12.11. Yeah. I just need to get that so we can get that over the community enterprise so we know that we have the tree, because I can't turn in just a partial amount. And so, and there's been a good suggestion sent to us by one of the council people on a decorating idea, but we're going to keep it to ourselves so the people out logging that want our idea won't see it.
Okay. Do we want to embarrass those 3 people, or are you confident that you'll be able to get their money?
They know who they are. I would not embarrass them.
Okay, good. Anything else, Mr. Bullock? No. Okay, seeing none other, we'll go to reports. Mr. Gaylor? I did remember you tonight.
Okay. I have nothing further this evening, thanks.
Mr. Flannery?
Mr. Mayor, actually, I was thinking of, these could be actually administrative business.
Okay, go back there. Let's go to administrative.
Well, it's only because they might need some type of direction from the council. One specifically, as you know, December 1st is the incentive timeline where incentives go away. I wanted to approach the subject with council. We have done numerous, in the thousands of notifications to households and businesses to let them know that that time frame is coming up, and we've seen some spike in activity. But I wanted to ask the council about your desire to extend that, and if you do, what time frame, whether it be June 1st as a possible idea. But I just wanted to, one, ask you that, and then...
You want that one first? We can take care of you want that one first? Mr. Gaylor, did you have some addition to that particular item?
Just to, no, in this item, it does expire December 1, so you need to act on it tonight. But then what we'll do is we'll bring back the written extension of the document you approved earlier, but tonight we just need to have some direction from council.
And before we get to council, this is something we can afford to do.
Yes, I think it actually piggybacks on the comment that Councilman Bullock made. It might actually spur growth. So what you're discounting as well is maybe actually encouraging more growth than typical.
Mr. Bullock, I imagine you want to push that, right?
Yes.
Okay. You don't want to say anything else about it before we tell them yes?
I was going to ask about that tonight, but I was thinking that they were going to come back after the 1st give us an update on how well it did, and then we extended it. But we have to extend it before it expires. So I would make a motion to extend it right now, and but I would like to have a time frame that all council wants to agree on. Is it going to be 6 months, 3 months?
Well, Larry suggested June 1st.
So that would be
6 months, 7 months.
Okay, I would say 6 months.
You like that one? Okay, Mr. McIntyre?
I second that motion.
Okay.
We will bring back presentation.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Now we'll be into discussion. Mr. Benson.
I guess I pushed my button. I was just going to ask Mr. Flannery, this is working.
It is. And you may have seen a press release in the last couple of weeks that shows just how many jobs and how much money it's brought in. And we're being asked to speak about it, so it's something that's catching on around the world. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Marina, discussion?
Yeah. Are we talking about all facets of the incentive program being extended?
I am. I would recommend if we have that package that we've been working with since you approved it in May, that we extend that to June 1st.
Okay. And I think it's a great idea. My only thing is if we could still get a report though on how well it's done, in the first half.
We'll make sure that we present that to you when we come back with the resolution.
Okay. The motion and a second. I have discussion. Voice vote, please. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion passes, and I'm assuming it's June 1st is your date.
Thank you. The second item I wanted to bring up was some council privately have let me know that they weren't necessarily pleased with the setup of the study session. And I just wanted to bring that out to the council as a whole so that we could get some direction, because it is something that obviously next week we won't have to do it because we've canceled that meeting. But with the study sessions coming up, wanted to know if that's a trend that you want to continue or not.
Okay. Mrs. Snyder?
Yes, I did get several calls and some feedback from some citizens that said that it's just difficult to see and to hear. And so I think that, and also, I was also thinking of the staff time. I know it must be at least a couple of hours, if not more, staff time to set that up. So, in light of that, if the citizens are unable to, hear or see, that's certainly not a good thing. So I would be in favor of returning all of the meetings back up here to the dais, but I will defer to the council on that.
Mr. Fuller?
I was going to ask council what they thought about that, because I got some comment on the night last week from audience members that they absolutely hated it. And I mean, they didn't say they didn't like it or they were displeased with it. I mean, their words were they hated it. They thought that we were really not working to our benefit by not being up here because we show better up here. I happen to like it, so I mean, I must be one of the ones that's at a disadvantage, but I was feeling relaxed and I enjoyed it down there. But I will defer to council on however they want to hold meetings from now on, because I'm flexible.
Okay. Mr. Benson?
Well, I'm ambivalent on the format. I would ask that if we do it that way in the future, that we provide a light, because when you're down there, there's not much light coming down on the table. I use this light here to be able to read things that I've had in front of. I really had a hard time reading things like that.
That is something that we identified last week. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Marino?
I'm personally pretty ambivalent about the format. I think it's, I don't necessarily agree with abandoning it without providing feedback on how maybe the situation can be improved upon. Because I think that there are some improvements that can be made. One of the things that I think, for example, the last study session we did have action items. I think that the format is more appropriate when we only have study items, so it's more of a free-flowing dialogue, and there's not, necessarily any action or presentations that can make that situation awkward, but that's my personal opinion.
Okay, Ms. Peter?
Yes, the audience that I spoke with, they did not like it. The people watching it on TV did not like it, and I did not like it. We have technology up here with the instruments and all that we want to speak, press the button if we want to speak. We are not lined up just vertical, that we have to reach our heads out and see who's saying what or whatever. To me, I did not like it at all.
Okay, Ms. Carson?
I was just going to say that I really did like the format. I enjoyed it a lot. And I agree with Mr. Benson, it is dark down there.
Mr. McIntyre?
I don't hate it, but
But I don't like it.
Yeah.
But I'm not a fan. Part of the challenge is the need to turn your head all the way around and see the folks behind you. I like the idea of getting more heavy on the study content and focusing, meeting more a month on that should we have the content. But a big thing of doing more in the realm of that study to get us to a place where we're having those lively discussions and not just marching through an agenda. That said, I've never been a big fan of the thought of the time that staff spends to reconfigure this entire room, lay cable, all of that. So I would be a big fan of doing away with that. I do think that the suggestion that Ms. Carson has raised previously about the accommodations for staff who are participating in a more study-heavy meeting, that if we do anything, that it be limited to helping staff have a more comfortable work environment during those more study-focused meetings. That's my 2 cents. Mr. Miller?
I was going to suggest the same thing, that if we did move from it, give staff that opportunity to have the tables or something so they have a comfortable work environment, because that was one thing I did notice, that they functioned a lot better. But if we want to move back up here, I'm okay with any place to go.
Okay, well, I'm going to take from what Mr. Bullock said, that if we maybe gave tables to staff, and we do away with this, but what I'm going to do is come down. Right now, what's in front of the council is getting back up here, but getting staff something down there. And then what I want to do is just run through council. Mr. Bullock, do you have any challenge with that?
I think that's the way we should go.
Okay, Mr. McElden. Mr. Johnson. Ms. Teeter. Ms. Snyder. Ms. Carson. Yes, Mr. Benson.
I'm good.
Mr. Marino.
Sounds good.
I would say, does that give you good direction?
Again, I'm sorry to prolong that component, but I think a couple items we needed to address.
And I just sat down there saying, I got to climb over the table to plug this in. It wasn't cut.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Very quickly, two brief items. I had a very good meeting with Joanne Stevenson with the Historic Society. Council said, let's move forward with the old gas station that we own. Obviously, there's a number of issues that involve that, where we'd like to just turn the keys over, but there's a number of things that we have to do from a liability standpoint. But that's progressing very well. Ms. Ryan Cordero and Mr. Gaylor have both been instrumental in helping that move along. So positive movement on that. Secondly, last Thursday on our holiday, Brittany and I attended a German Chamber of Commerce where a number of wind energy companies came in to present. And we've got some good leads in regard to that, and actually have made some really positive connections with some of the board members and following up with some of those wind energy companies. So just wanted to let you know that we had a good discussion.
Great, thank you, sir. We are becoming global. Did you have something before we go to reports?
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead, sir.
We have, on a few occasions that we've actively engaged with the GACC, we seem to have an amazingly positive rapport there. I just wonder if maybe we have Ms. Morris extend an invite to actually host one of their events somewhere in our city, just to try and bring them in because we've got Inga Ferrix there who has a relationship with soccer. We've got a number of folks who are here with the founders. Obviously, has a business here in Commerce City, so it would be great to see if they could bring like the meetings.
Absolutely, and we actually hosted Inga and one of our board members at the soccer game on Saturday that we want to go. So, excellent. Good luck.
And just so, I know Jason knows this, and so does Mr. McEldowney knows this as well as Ms. Snyder, but Edelweiss is right here in Commerce City. So, reports. Mr. Bullock.
Yes, I just have two things to report on. One of them, I understand, Mr. Callahan, how he felt on last Tuesday when we did the Veterans Memorial, because I stood up there biting my lip, trying not to choke up and everything, because it was very moving, and my stone was down there, and I looked at it and got pictures taken around it, and my father-in-law and my brother-in-law, they all showed up, and we all talked about it, and they really, I mean, when you look down and you say, wow, I am actually on a Veterans Memorial, and long after I'm dead, my stone will still be there. The bench that the council presented, it looks great, and the plaque on it, it was just a moving situation, and we read all the names, took turns and everything, and it was honestly, except for the freezing part, which Tracy was absolutely shivering. She could not, I don't even know how she did it, but she shivered the whole time. And then we went inside and it was perfect because the temperature was just great. But that was absolutely, and then another highlight was going to the soccer game Saturday, and we won 1-0, and we're in the cup for the championship. And Dallas beat LA, which LA was expected to go all the way, and so we should go up to Toronto next Sunday and beat Dallas. Now that's what should happen. So it's just been a good week. So there's nothing negative about anything going on in Commerce City last week.
We should have the advantage too being up there, huh?
Yes.
We should have the advantage. Mr. McEldowney?
Just regret that I wasn't able to join the dedication of the Renewed Memorial. I've been looking forward to that. Unfortunately, work obligations wouldn't allow me to depart. But hats off to Ms. Snyder for leading that effort that day. Obviously, the feedback has been phenomenal. And I am eager to take my dad over there and give him a look. So, again, hats off to all involved in pulling that together.
Mr. Johnson?
No report.
Peter?
Yes, I too regret I was unable to attend that, Ms. Snyder. You know my reasons why. Secondly and lastly, I attended with Brittany Morris the Denver Aviation Economic Development at the Chamber of Commerce where Tom Clark hosted it. Thank you.
Mr. Marino?
Just wanted to express my thanks to Councilwoman Snyder and Councilman Bullock for getting the bench organized, and it does look great, and it's nice to see it there and for us to pull together and put that together. On Tuesday, I attended a cultural council meeting. We actually have our illustrious Vice President in the audience, Maura O'Neill, and there's some really exciting stuff going on with that. We have some funds to expend before the end of the year, so we're planning a art show with students on December 13th, right before the council meeting at 5 o'clock. Should be a pretty good party because we have to spend that money before we have to give it back. On Wednesday, attended the Housing Authority meeting. Our new person, or I don't know what to call him, Housing Authority agent, should be starting soon, so that's exciting to see. And on Saturday, attended the grand opening of the Rangeview Library, renovated library in Commerce City. It's an absolutely beautiful library. There was a line out the door to renew library cards, and people were walking out with handfuls of books, so that was good to see. And it's a great asset to the community.
Mr. Benson?
Yes, thank you. Well, I also attended the Veterans Memorial dedication. I want to congratulate Mayor Pro Tem Snyder for hosting that event, and I was very happy to coincidentally get to read the names of the only 2 Marines on the list that we read off. On Thursday, we had an E470 meeting. We're still talking about raising the speed limit, but it's complicated. Don't know where it's going to happen. I think we're going to stick with 2 tiers. Either you have the transponder or you don't. And if you don't have the transponder, it's going to cost you at least 25% more. Not just 25 cents, but 25%, and that's probably going to go up. If you don't get a transponder, you're going to wind up paying a lot more money on E470. So I would encourage all of you to get transponders, and what we're going to is, you've seen the transponder that's about this size and about 1/4 of an inch thick. We're going to just a little, it looks like a little piece of tape that's about 1 inch wide and about 2 inches long. And that'll be all that'll be necessary for you to go through the readers on E470 to get your card read. So I would encourage all of you who don't have a transponder, they don't cost anything, but you're going to be paying a lot more money if you drive on that road and you don't have a transponder. I mean, you'll be able to do it, you won't be fined or anything. You'll just wind up paying more money every time you go to a checkpoint. On Friday night, December the 12th, and I guess it's also coincidental that Veterans Day, which is November the 11th, and the birthday of the United States Marine Corps, which is November the 10th, we had a Marine Corps birthday party over at the Red Lion Hotel on Friday night. That was a very great event. I mean, the Junior Marine Corps ROTC from Adams County and Adams City High School really did an outstanding job. They put on a great show, and I was very impressed. I think there must have been, gosh, I don't know, 300 or 400 people there. It was a very well attended event. I met a man, I guess he was the guest of honor. He was a Marine Corps veteran from the siege in the Quezon Valley from December 67 through April of 68, where about 4,500 Marines were trapped in the Quezon Valley, surrounded by 40,000 NVA troops. They had to be resupplied totally by air. It wasn't a real fun time if you were in the Quezon Valley at that time. But, I was glad to get to talk to him and get a first-hand account of some of his experiences there. I want to thank United Power for giving us these light bulbs. And I want to say that on December the 4th, there's going to be a flag football game between the Commerce City Police and the Adams City High School football team. And tickets are available. It's open to the public. I'm going to be on the police team, and if you want to see me get knocked down and beat up, then now this is your chance, because I can still deliver a blow and take a blow, but I expect to be hurting by the end of that game. That's all. There's no football report this week, but there will be definitely on Monday. Well, I guess there won't be enough Monday, but it's Carson.
I also had the honor of attending the memorial for the veterans. And Ms. Snyder, thank you. You did a wonderful job there. And I was given great honor and privilege to be the one to read the name of Mr. Robert Naylor. So thank you for your service, sir. And then attended the housing authority meeting. So yeah, it was a good week.
Ms. Snyder.
It was my honor to be able to dedicate the Veterans Memorial. It was certainly an emotional day. I'm glad we were able to move it inside so fast, and I want to thank Park and Rec for working with me to get it moved inside so quickly, because the weather turned ugly fast, and we had some World War II vets out there, and not to mention myself, as teeth were literally chattering out of my head, as Councilman Bullock brought up. My mom and I were able to
managed to sneak it past my dad that we had dedicated a brick to him, and so he didn't know about it until at the actual event. He didn't even know what he was coming down the hill for until we got to the event. And sneaking something past him is not an easy thing to do. So he was really, it was an emotional day, and there's a lot of things that I didn't understand about what happened in Vietnam and his experiences. He hasn't really discussed a lot of those, even in my childhood. We didn't really have very many discussions about that. So the gentleman that was here earlier, him and I had some discussions, as he had mentioned when he was up here. And the next day, the next morning, when my father came over to the house, he came to the house and made breakfast. And for the first time, we really had a discussion. In all these years, the first time we really had a discussion about how he felt and about how some of the things that happened and the way that the servicemen were treated when they came back home from that particular war. So it's really, it's pretty heartbreaking. So my heart and my soul go out to everyone who has served in the armed forces and continues to serve. And my thoughts and prayers are with the current servicemen and women that are out there right now fighting. So I just want to say thank you to the council for the opportunity to be able to serve in that capacity, for the dedication. Also want to thank everyone, Charlene Meeker and the Derby Business Association and everybody that was involved with the library and continues to be involved. The library looks amazing. If you haven't had a chance to get over there and check it out, definitely do, because it is really amazing. And as Councilman Moreno said, the line was literally out the door around the corner to get in, and library cards were being dispensed like mad. So I think it's going to be a pride, of Derby, and it's just one more thing in Derby. As we progress on to turn Derby around, it's just one more piece, that will continue to move us forward. So thank you to everyone for that.
One more thank you, Julia. I know my wife was much rather than there than where she was that day. You did a wonderful job there. I think the food thing was phenomenal. I wasn't here late last time. I want to thank Ms. Cheater for filling in for me for the last little bit of that meeting. I really appreciated it. And I didn't get a chance to say thank you to Mr. Cordera for the Nine Health Fair. I've been involved in that for, I guess, the 3 years that it's been there. And this was the easiest one I have ever seen. People were actually able to walk around and talk to people that were in line, and it was a wonderful event. He really knew how to organize an event. I want to thank staff and City Council for the progress of this at the wife while she was in the hospital. It was really nice, and it definitely improved the room. I don't think there's a hospital room any place that looks good. I want to say congratulations to School Board President Jim Lewis, who was named the Volunteer of the Year for Credit Union Colorado. And then the only two things that I did outside of watching my wife and taking care of her was on Wednesday night there was a mayor's commissioner's legislative reception for all of the legislators. And it was very interesting because metro area, a lot of legislators there was probably several hundred people there. Out of Adams County, there was only one rep that did not show up. So we had a very good showing in Adams County, which was really good. The other thing that I just want to announce to council is that I was picked for the governor's transition team. I will be working on the revenue department where I worked for 22 years. It's going to be pretty time intensive, but work with John Hickenlooper for his first 100 days is going to be really exciting. Brittany, that's true, and Brittany was picked to be on the ED and the International Committee, as was Bill Becker from ACBD. So Adams County, congratulations to both of them. Congratulations to Adams County for being out there, which is really nice. If there be no further business coming before this board, we will be adjourned and drive safe. And Mr. Flannery, I have some stuff for you. Do you have a minute?
As far as I know.
You want to keep people in suspense?
We'd be driving lights, you're in Texas, where else?